Hi guys, this is Hirosaki. This story is all about what if Naruto was born a low-class devil before the Great Devil War. Realizing how the devil class system subjugated devils of lower class, Naruto will represent his origins as he rises and expose the corrupted system that he lives in, and he'll do it without the high-class devils even realizing it. Before we start, kindly like and subscribe to this channel, and look over the description box for the author of this amazing storyline. Welcome aboard. Chapter 9, How It Doesn't Feel to Be Alive. 2 days later. Occult Research Club. Rias winced as the needle pierced her skin and entered into one of her veins. While she was the heir of the Gremory clan, needles always made her feel uncomfortable. Good, said Orochimaru as he watched the blood flow from the needle and into the awaiting blood bag. It was after school and Orochimaru had on his usual business suit while Rias Peerage had on their school uniform. The Gremory heir was sitting in her desk chair, while clenching a stress ball to force more blood out of her veins. Seems like everything is going smoothly. This is uncomfortable, Rias muttered as she looked at the needle protruding from her arm. Uncomfortable, but necessary, Orochimaru said as he sipped some tea. We did our part, and now it's your turn. Aren't you glad that you're out your marriage? I thought you'd be more grateful than this. I am grateful, truly, but needles will always be one of my many weaknesses, she answered. Fufufu, don't worry about it, Bucho. This pain isn't all that bad, Akino said with a chuckle. I didn't know you had such weak skin. Maybe Orochimaru was right about you all along. And that's why I like your queen more than I like you, princess, Orochimaru said with his own laugh. I feel like Akino has better qualities of a king more than you do. Shut up, Rias said with a depressing cloud over her head. What about Sona's blood, Mr. Orochimaru? Asked Kiba. I received her blood during our lunch break. With the princess blood with me, now we have all the blood we need to realize our goals. And just what are those goals? Asked Rias. You'll learn soon, Kukoku, he said with a creepy laugh. I see our friend How didn't harm the young phoenix. Are you happy about that? Yes, I am. He really played with my emotions, the redhead said with a sigh. I'm just glad she's okay. I don't know how I could live with myself at the cost of someone innocent. Ho ho, like how you did with Issei. Rias winced again, only it wasn't from the pain from the needle in her arm. She looked over to Issei, who once was quietly eating some of the cookies Akino had made, but now he was staring at her with cold eyes. She clenched her fist and shamefully avoided his eyes on her. While they were doing okay, Issei still held onto his distrust for the girl. He had lost his humanity, freedom, and first love because of her, and it was something he'd never forget. Stop saying things like that, she whispered. Orochimaru laughed at her sorrow-ridden face. Sure, as long as you're happy, I'm happy, fufufu. When will this thing be over with? She asked. Give it 5 minutes and it'll all be over. You'll have paid off your debt and everything will be peachy between us now, said Orochimaru. However, there was something I'd like to talk to you all about. Which is? Rias asked with a raised eyebrow. Kiba said. Boy turned his head towards the snake man. How would you feel if you died in a raiding game? Well, I wouldn't be too happy about that, but since I would be dead, I wouldn't be able to feel anything. Right. So who would you feel if I were able to save Rias from being killed just because she's a high-class devil and you're just considered a weak, low-class devil? Kiba frowned. That wouldn't be nice. Orochimaru laughed at the boy's choice of words, and many low-class devils feel the same way. I would ask the little cat girl, but she's not here, nor is the nun. Kaneko has contract work while Asia is with friends, Rias said with a frown. She didn't like the conversation in which Orochimaru was headed, but she needed to hear this. Continue with what you were going to say, Orochimaru. Sure. I should ask your queen the same question. How would you feel if Princess Life was saved during a raiding game while you were left to die? He asked. I don't know, but the feelings would be far from positive. Akino answered with a frown. And you, idiot boy, Orochimaru looked over his shoulder to Issei, whose hair was overshadowing his eyes. How would you feel if dash? It would only further prove my point. Issei interrupted. Devils really aren't good people. Well, most of them, anyway. That isn't true, Issei. Rias said, but a quick glare from the boosted gear user quickly shut her up. Well, a lot of low-class devils agree with your thoughts, myself included. Answered Orochimaru. The stunt that your older brother did create a wave of talks in the underworld. Never in history has it been seen where a devil was saved from death during a raiding game. While deaths in a raiding games are rare, the fact that a high-class devil was saved from death during the game has a lot of people questioning the credibility of those over that raiding game and the favoritism showed for Revel Phoenix. While I will never be able to truly understand the life of low-class devils, I understand their thinking. Rias said with a sigh. I heard about what happened in the stands that my brother and Lord Phoenix were in. Lord Phoenix threatened to stop the production of Phoenix Tears if he allowed Revel to be killed. Forced into a corner, my brother nullified the arranged marriage, hoping that his was a good excuse, but people saw over their bluff. And devils are becoming distrustful now. Orochimaru continued. Those who died in raiding games? Hardly any of them were high-class devils, most were low-class devils, while a small handful were middle-class devils. Seeing Revel Phoenix saved from Hao's wrath was a public display of favoritism for high-class devils, and the lower devils don't like that at all. That shit is just crazy. Issei said as he stood from his seat. It's like, we're just slaves. Issei, that isn't true. Rias yelled in desperation. Yes, it is. He answered in a defeated tone. If I were to forget about how I was revived, I would probably be love-stricken with you because I was accepted into the peerage of Rias Gremory, a girl from a clan known for taking care of its peerage members. But what about other clans or other reincarnated devils? They might be treated like shit while I'm over here walking around with all types of freedom that I don't even notice I have. Very wise words for such an oaf, Orochimaru said, but it's true. Low-class devils didn't take that stunt Lucifer-sama pulled off well. What could this mean for the future? Honestly, I don't know, but it won't be anything good. Rias sighed again and looked towards her peerage. No matter what happens, I want you all to know that I value your lives, no matter how you were reincarnated. She looked to Issei specifically, who was paying attention to every word. I know I have certain liberties that you don't have because of me being of noble birth, but understand that I'd give up my life for any one of you. You all are my family and I love you. Ah, how nice. Akino said with a smile. Your feelings are reciprocated, Bucho, and I thank you for reincarnating me way back. I also feel the same. Thank you, Bucho, for everything, said Kiba with a bow. Rias smiled at Akino and Kiba, but her uncertainties appeared as a frown when she turned to Issei, who seemed to be in deep thought. Issei? She asked quietly, wanting to hear a reply. Issei ran a hand through his hair before answering the older devil. Those were the words I wanted to hear. It makes me feel happy in a way, but sigh, I don't know. He shook his head and grabbed his backpack. I'll see you all tomorrow. I've got a lot to think about, he said as he left the room with a backhanded wave. Kukoku, seems the boy is smarter than I thought, actually thinking things through. Orochimaru said with praise. It'd be best for him to learn things like this now rather than later. You didn't have to say what you said. Rias glared at the snake man, making him chuckle again. And why do you find everything I say funny? Such ignorance, he said with a laugh, causing her to pout. I'm just being me, princess, and it was the truth. You were a little hypocritical with your words about Revel, since you were the one who got an innocent person into all this mess. I guess, and I don't know how to make it up to him, she said with disappointment. I'm sure Issei will turn around soon, Bucho. We just need to make him comfortable around us, and he'll accept his predicament soon. Akino said wisely. Maybe, or he'll act rashly and do something stupid, said Orochimaru with a shrug. He checked the blood bag to see that it was almost full. There is no telling what is going on in that boy's mind, well except for woman's private parts, but other than that, he's unpredictable. Rias nodded in agreement. I'm sure your master was happy with the results of the rating game. Very much so. Said Orochimaru. He applauded Hao for his stunt and creativity on the battlefield. So your master was okay with what that evil man did? Asked Rias with a raised eyebrow. Absolutely, because my master's peerage members understand that he wouldn't put us in any situation we couldn't handle. How did something to cause a stir in the underworld, which will make devils, both high and low-classed, remember us? Master isn't a selfish man, but a humble beast, a quality a lot of devils lack. You should learn from him. Plus, my master wanted us to stand out in our rating games to create a name for ourselves. He is very pleased with how things are going. And when will we be able to meet your master? Asked Kiba. Orochimaru chuckled gleefully when he noticed that the blood bag was filled. He slowly pulled the needle out of Rias' arm, causing her to wince again in pain, before covering it up in a cotton ball. Everyone in the room shivered at Orochimaru as his evil grin grew as he held the bag in front of his face. Oh, you shall meet him soon. He said with a laugh. Very soon, fufufu. Naruto's peerage house. Hold up your defense, Issei. Shouted Lee as he punched at Issei repeatedly. I'm trying. He said through gritted teeth as he held up his arms, guarding his face from Lee's punches. Lee was helping Issei with his defense, while Issei was Lee's personal punching bag during their training session. Eyes open. Lee yelled as he appeared behind an unsuspecting Issei and kicked him in his back. Issei coughed as he landed on the ground and glared at Lee with cold eyes. I'm going to get you. He growled as he struggled to get back on his feet. I hope you do, Issei. Said a hyper Lee. This is stupid. The pervert can't do anything. Said Anna from a lawn chair as she watched Issei try to block and dodged Lee's attacks. He needs to know what pain feels like in order for him to ignore it in a battle. Explained Yo as he handed Anna a glass of tea, which she happily accepted. He has potential, but he has the wrong motivation. Like what? I'll continue to get stronger for all the Issei in my future harem. Shouted Issei as he dodged an overhead kick from Lee. He went to attack Lee's other leg that was planted on the ground, but Lee sprouted his wings and flew over Issei, causing Issei to land on the hard earth flat on his face. Pervert. She muttered as she sipped the tea through her straw. Yup, but he also wants to protect his friends. He's a good person, Anna, just a little confused on his priorities. Explained Yo. He'd better get his priorities straight if he wants to be here with us. Answered Anna. Damn it. Shouted Issei as he was punched again by Lee. This was starting to aggravate him to his limit. Ha ha ha. Again, Issei. Said Lee in his trademark battle stance. No. The same thing keeps on happening. Every time I try to hit you. He looked up to Lee and glared at him in anger. The same thing continues to happen. Well, you'll have to try something else then. Answered Lee with a frown. He didn't want to anger his friend, he just wanted to help him get stronger. Damn it. Issei said as he punched the ground with his boosted gear, making a dent in the earth. The same thing, every time. Maybe you should give up. Anna said nonchalantly, but the word struck Issei hard. Maybe he couldn't do it. He was, after all, just a lowly pawn. Nothing special at all. The memory of him waving off Yuma as she walked away from him after their first date filled his mind. His heart wretched in pain when the memory of her being killed by Rainier started, and the feeling of sadness he had when he held her dead, bleeding body. Damn it, I can't move, I'm really going to die. I'm SOR sorry. Yuma. Sorry that I couldn't protect you. Issei opened his eyes in anger as magic circled around him. Never again. he shouted as his magic centered on his gauntlet-enhanced arm. His boosted gear's green gem gleamed with power as his arm started to convulse. His boosted gear started to grow, covering his arm in its red scales. 4 additional golden spikes grew from upper part of the gear while 2 grew on the sides. Finally, another green gem appeared in the middle of gear and finished its transformation. Dragon Booster Second Liberation. Draic voices shouted from the gear. Issei looked at his upgraded gear in awe as he could feel the power flowing from it. Anna, Lee, and Yo looked on in shock at the new turn of events. This feels fucking awesome. Issei yelled with a fist pump. Great job, Issei. Lee congratulated with his own applause. That's what I'm talking about. Yo said happily. Issei smiled at his friends. He was glad that they were here to experience this with him. He looked towards Anna, hoping to hear some words of encouragement, however. Does it look like I care? Yo slumped in defeat and despair. It was luck on your side, pervert. You probably thought about breast and received your perverted power boost. Thanks a lot, Anna. He said sadly. Anna, be nicer. This is big for him. Yo said. Anna rolled her eyes and sipped some of her tea. Good job, pervert. She said quietly, but everyone. Issei grinned childishly and raised both of his hands in victory. To be praised by the great Anna-sama? What has the world come to? He laughed. Lee and Yo laughed with him, while Anna ignored them. She did have a small grin. All right, enough training for the day, said Hao, entering the backyard. The new documentary on the Mayans just came on, and I'd like to watch it in peace. All the cried and screams of pain from the pervert is very distracting. Look how, said Issei as he pointed towards his upgraded sacred gear. My boosted gear transformed. Isn't it cool? Did you grab Anna's breast in order to gain strength? Asked Hao with a laugh. Anna sent Hao her deadliest glare while Yo just shook his head in disappointment. Please refrain from using my fiancé in such jokes, said Yo. Yeah, well, you all come inside. Again, I want to watch this documentary in peace. I'm sure if you keep this going, Kisame will wake from his slumber. I'd rather it be quiet than deal with him. They all agreed and headed into the living room. Lee made some popcorn for everyone while Yo handed everyone some soda and settled down into the many couches in the room. The first few minutes of the documentary went uninterrupted, but that changed when a magic circle appeared in front of the TV, Orochimaru and all his evil glory coming from it. Why, isn't this nice? Said Orochimaru as the light from the seal faded. No fighting, the house is quiet, nothing is burning. Kokoku, what the occasion? A Mayan documentary just came on the History Channel. It's very interesting, said Hao. Ah, well, I'll leave you all to it. I'll be in my room. What is that? Said Orochimaru, his senses kicking in. Hao paused the show, also sensing the magic of someone nearby. Someone's coming, he muttered as he stood from his seat, everyone except for Issei following his lead. Hold up. What's going on? Who's coming? He asked frantically. If we knew, we wouldn't be so cautious, replied Anna with narrowed eyes. I can sense that this person is young, female, and I sense a queen piece, she said in confusion. Do you think that this is our queen? Lee asked with stars in his eyes. It may possibly be her, stated Anna. I can sense her strength. She's strong, maybe even stronger than Kisame. Wow, muttered Issei. While he never seen the Sharkman fight to his fullest, to know that their queen may be stronger than Kisame was an impressive accomplishment. She's on the yard now, said Orochimaru. I guess this was the inevitable. I've wanted to know who this person was anyway, and why we haven't met her yet. Oh, I bet she's amazing. We have to meet her now, said Lee as he rushed past Orochimaru and opened the door. She saw the approaching women and hearts filled his eyes. He jumped towards her with open arms. "Welcome to Naruto-sama's peerage Hojiya." He shouted in pain when he felt a heavy blow to his stomach. Blood flew out of Lee's out and his ribs creaked from the pressure of the blow. His body flew over the house and into the backyard in a small crater. "Naya? What was that?" Kuroka asked as she placed her outstretched foot back on the ground. That was Lee. An orange orb appeared on her shoulder. "He's a nice guy." "Well, he shouldn't have run towards me like that, Naya," said Kuroka with a huff as she continued her walk towards the front porch. Orochimaru stepped outside to greet Kuroka. "Greetings. Forgive Lee, please. He's been very excited to meet you these last few weeks," he said. "A little too excited if you ask me," she said with a huff. "And you are, Naya?" "My name is Orochimaru, my master's pawn and advisor of his peerage." "Oh, Naruto has said a lot about you. Thanks for all the help you've done these last few weeks," Kuroka said with a friendly smile. "Your words are appreciated," Orochimaru said with bow. Kuroka raised an eyebrow at Orochimaru's politeness. You don't have to bow or anything like that, Naya," the girl said with a twitch of her ears. "However, it does make me feel important," she said with a laugh. Orochimaru chuckled with her, of course. "Please, come in," he said as he opened the door for her. Kuroka stepped into the house and felt 4 pairs of eyes on her. Anna, Issei, Yo, and How were staring at her questionably, weary if she was what they believed she was. The sliding door to the backyard opened and Lee hobbled back into the room. That kick, it was, so youthful. He shouted with stars in his eyes again, all injuries magically disappearing. Naya? What's with all that screaming and shit?" shouted Kisame as he walked down the stairs with Samehade. His eyes landed on Kuroka and his heart dropped. "Sharky? Oh, hell no," he said with wide eyes. "What is this bitch doing here? I thought this was a safe haven?" "You know her?" Anna asked. "I had a run-in with her a couple years back in the underworld," Kisame said with a growl. "Stupid bitch was fishing in my domain and her hook caught me by the ear. I swam above water and we started to fight. This crazy cat idiot almost tore off my arm." He finished with a yell. "You wanted to tear my tails off," she answered back with a yell. The two entered a staring contest with fire in their eyes. "Seems like you're not the only person who dislikes Kisame," Yo said to Anna, who nodded in agreement. "What are you doing here anyway?" Kisame said as he crossed his arms together. "This is our master's house, right?" she said with a hiss. "I am his queen, so I have even more right to be here than you do." "Who cares if you're his queen? I say you can't stay here, so boom. You can't stay here. There's plenty of hotels for hoes like you downtown. I swear if I knew how to cook, I'd throw you in the oven and cover you with seasoning," she shouted with another hiss. Friends. We shouldn't fight," Yo said with a smile. "We're a team, so no fighting. You'll be fighting her by the end of week when you get to know her," Kisame said with a sigh as he made his way downstairs. He made sure to bump into Kuroka while making his way into the living room. "I can't wait to kill you. Get in line, because you're not the only one, Sharky." Naya. After the fiasco ended, everyone made their way into the dining room and sat around the table. Kuroka sat at one end of the table while Orochimaru sat at the other. "Even after all that yelling, we still don't have your name yet," he said with curiosity. "Oh, Naya. My mistake. My name is Kuroka and I'm a Nekishu." "A Nekishu?" Orochimaru's head perked up in interest. "That's a very rare breed of Nikomata." Yup. Which makes me all the more amazing." she said as she kicked her feet up on the table. Should I be here? Issei asked as he raised his hand. I'm not a part of your peerage, Sue. I guess you should leave. Said Orochimaru. This is a meeting between my master's peerage and our queen. We'll be talking a lot, something we don't want to reveal yet. Come on, Orochimaru. Said Yo with shrug. Our plan is soon to happen, so we might as well let Issei listen. We've gotten used to him being around all the time, and it won't be long until our secret's out. I say he stays. Are you sure? While we have gotten used to the perverted idiot being here, don't you think we're a little too comfortable around him? Yo winked at Orochimaru. Orochimaru raised an eyebrow. It'll be fine, plus, you know. Fine. The boy can stay. Said Orochimaru with roll of his eyes. Really? But why? Asked a confused but happy Issei. It won't be long for our secret to be out. Answered. How it doesn't really matter what you see or hear, everyone will know sooner or later. I'd say much more sooner than later. Kuroka said with a grin, catching everyone's attention. What do you mean by that? Asked Orochimaru. I'll explain the situation for our new little friend here. Said Kuroka, focusing on Issei. Issei was trying to keep his perverted tendencies to himself, but he couldn't help but notice that Kuroka was very beautiful and her breasts were basically spilling from her loose kimono. What situation? He said with a blush on his face. The real reason why we needed blood from different devils of certain clans. Issei perked up at Kuroka's words. Everything I'm about to say is 100% true, so listen well, little boy. Sure. I'm all ears. He said. I'd like to listen in as well. Draig said as boosted gear appeared on Issei's arm. I've been interested in what this peerage's real goal was. Naya, is that the Red Dragon Emperor? Asked Kuroka. Yes. My name is Draig, partner to this idiot. Said the dragon. Hey. I'm not an idiot. Shouted Issei. Kuroka giggled cutely at the two before speaking. Well then, to be honest with you, my master's name is Naruto Bael. Naruto Bael, so he is a Bael then. Issei said Rias suspected that he was a Bael when he killed Rainier. She said the way his magic was deteriorating her body was similar to her power of destruction. Seems Princess picked up on that sooner than I expected. Orochimaru said with a laugh. Well, a long time ago, Naruto was imprisoned into a seal because of his relationship with former lover, Cersex Citri. Everyone except for me felt the animosity Kuroka had when she spoke of the Satan's name. During the centuries he was imprisoned, he's been gaining knowledge and waiting for the right opportunity to break free. Naya. You mean, he's stuck in a seal? But for how long? Asked the Grimoire's pawn. It's had to be over 500, maybe 600, years. Cersex said sadly. 500 or 600 years. Issei whispered in disbelief. That's crazy. Why would some devils disagree with Naruto's relationship with Cersex? Since he has a peerage, doesn't that make him a high-class devil? Asked Draig. He wasn't a high-class devil while he was dating Cersex. He was a low-class devil that was a part of her legion during the civil war between devils. Naruto became a war hero for his efforts in the war, including saving Cersex' life. After that, he secretly became a high-class devil after the war when Lord and Lady Citri turned on him. Issei ran his hands through his hair as he took in the information Kuroka told him. It's like they don't even care that he's a devil. He did all that shit and nobody cares. It's aggravating, I know, Naya. Said Kuroka, but it's something he's lived with for so long, by himself, in a seal for centuries. Now it's our job to get him out. The blood. Draig interrupted. The blood you've been gathering is for your master's revival, I assume. Yup. The Nekishu answered. We've been gathering blood of certain clans that sealed Naruto. Grimoire, Bael and Citri all had a part in the sealing of Naruto. Naya, so we have to have the blood of high-class devils from those clans in order to free him. But that's our problem. Anna entered the conversation. We have all the blood we need, but we don't know if the blood we have will work. Almost all of the blood samples we have are from hybrid devils. Rias is a Gremory and Bael. Cerorg's blood is half Bael and Vapula. Even Cersex Lucifer's blood is half Gremory and Bael. The only pure sample we have is of Sona Citries. I see. So you'll get more blood from pure-breed devils to be on the safe side? Asked Issei. No. Kuroka grew a cocky smirk. I believe we have enough blood as it is. We can go free Naruto tonight. Tonight? How? Asked with a raised eyebrow. How? Kuroka couldn't hold her growing grin as she made a magic circle, and another blood bag appeared in her hand. She set it down on the table and crossed her arms. And what is this? Asked Orochimaru. That, Snakey, is the blood of Naruto Bael, a born, noble, pure-blooded Bael. What? Shouted Kisame as he jumped out of his seat in disbelief. That's not possible. Even the usually stoic Anna couldn't hide her shock as she looked at the bag of blood from a high-class Bael. This is impossible. How could you retrieve such blood? A Bael from her stature wouldn't just give her blood away, unless you promised her something in return. Or Kuroka winked at Anna. I could have just broke into her house, knocked out her and her maids, and just got the blood myself. A backup plan. Orochimaru's body shook as he looked at the bag. This was the plan that his master was talking about. YOSH. We can save master tonight. I say we go out and free him now. Who's with me? Shouted Lee. Me. Naya. Kuroka playfully raised her hand with a cute smile. I'm in all the way. He's been in that jail of his for too long. I say we ride out tonight. Answered Yo. Hell yeah. Let's do this shit tonight. I'll go get my robbing ski mask. Said Kisame with a grin. We've all assembled under this house together without our king. I say it's time to bring him home. Said Anna with determination in her eyes. I agree. It's time to end Naruto-sama's unjustified imprisonment and thank him for everything he's done for us face to face. Answered Hao with clenched fist. The spirit of fire as yelled out in approval from within Hao's mind. Orochimaru smirked at his colleagues. The happiness and joy filling the room even affected him as his heart started to beat faster. He was excited. He was excited for once in his life, and he had people with him achieve to a similar goal. There weren't any alternative motives, no distrust. So, this is the feeling you promised, Naruto-sama. Orochimaru said as he closed his eyes. I guess I can get used to this after all. Having people that genuinely care for you, Kokoku. Let's see where this takes us. While we don't know where he is, everyone stopped talking, so they could listen to Orochimaru's words. I'm sure Naruto-sama has a backup plan, just like how he usually does. It's time our master taste his first breath of fresh air for the first time in centuries. We leave tonight. That's what I'm talking about. Shouted Kisame, his Samahata shrieking in glee with him. Finally, I actually agree with your pasty ass. I'd like to go as well. Shouted Issei, gaining everyone's attention. Why? Asked Hao. Naruto-sama isn't your master. Why do you care? This guy, he's been through so much. I'm sure you haven't told me everything about him, but I know that he's had to go through so many struggles, and he's still had his mind intact to bring all these good people together. I'd like to meet him the moment he is freed and get to know him. Kokoku, good answer, perverted idiot. Said Orochimaru with a laugh. I'm sure everyone's alright with you coming to meet him. Just don't do anything stupid. Said Anna. Everyone laughed while Issei sulked in a corner by himself. You know what? We should celebrate. I downloaded the new Purge movie from this super secret website I found, and it's got all the high-def quality. said Kisame. The new purge. Can I watch? Naya. Kuroka asked with stars in her eyes. You know, I'll forget that I hate you for the next 3 hours and let you watch. Rookie. Prepare the popcorn. Pervert. Get the drinks. Yes, sir. Lee and Issei said at the same time and saluted at Kisame. The team started to make their way to the living, however, before Hao could sit down, he felt a tug on his robe. I need to talk to you, said Anna. Hao raised an eyebrow at her, but he followed out to the back porch. It wasn't many times that Anna wanted to speak, so it had to be something serious. Closing the sliding door behind her, Anna kicked her left foot on the wall and leaned back, crossing her arms while doing so. I wanted to talk to you about what you did during that raiding game. Come on, Anna. This? Really? Hao said with disappointment in his voice. He thought that she brought him out here for something important. Now, Kisame was probably going to get the good recliner in the living room. Yes, really. She said with all seriousness in her voice. You did too much in that fight. A lot of the things you did during that fight were unnecessary. Unnecessary, maybe, but I had a job to do. Hao countered with a frown. Naruto-sama asked me to do something to gain attention, and that stunt worked. Did you not see what happened? A high-class devil's life was saved from the axe inside of a raiding game. Do you understand the severity of that? I do, but that girl. I saw the look in her eyes. You could have traumatized her. And what does that matter, Anna? Hao snapped. Truly, what does that even mean to you? I did what I was told, and I did it well. Have you heard Naruto-sama go against what I did, home? Is Naruto-sama mad that I almost killed that girl, or is he happy about the outcry that is currently happening in the underworld? Please tell me which one it is, and I'll listen. Anna glared at Hao. Well, since you want to be a dick about it, I'll be honest with you. What you did to that girl wasn't even thing I was mostly worried about. I don't know her nor do I care for her one bit. So what is it that you seem to have a problem with then? Asked Hao. Your brother, Yoasakura? Surely you haven't forgotten about him, right? Hao sighed and placed his hand over his face. Anna, listen. Be quiet. She demanded. I listened to your pointless banter, and now you'll listen to mine. You had to go throughout during those years of your rebellion. When you were killing anyone for any reason, running away from reality and thinking that you were invincible? You had to sit through all your bullshit. He even tried to help you, but you dismissed him because you were mad at him for not having the same viewpoints on life. You hated him while he loved you even through all your dumb phases. Watching you was like watching an orc go through puberty. Hao shook his head, but continued to listen me, and you have seen your handiwork to people when you don't like something. We've seen the bodies, or the lack of them. The things you used to do to please Spirit of Fire were despicable. And I understand that, Anna, but that was the old me. He said as he rolled his eyes. I don't see what your point is now. Are you trying to guilt trip me into something I've already come to terms with? During that battle with Riser, you looked like the old you. Hao narrowed his eyes. I felt it. But most importantly, your brother, Yo, felt it. While it wasn't as extreme like your past work, it felt similar. Your attitude, your coldness, it was all there. He noticed it and was worried for you. So I just want you to understand that you can't go around doing whatever you want anymore. It seems like you don't care about life again, and Yo notices that. You need to stop your homicidal tendencies, or I'll handle you myself. Ho. Now Hao was really interested. And what do you mean by that? You'd kill me? Your future brother-in-law? In a heartbeat. She answered without any hesitation, surprising the older boy. What you do affects Yo, and if you even think about going back to your old ways, I'd kill you even if Yo was watching. Strong words you say, but I don't know if you could back them up. Hao said as he walked up to Anna. You're strong, and I still believe that you're hiding your real strength, but do you honestly think you could kill me? No, it wouldn't be easy, but I'd try to make it happen. I don't care if Yo is mad at me for the remainder of time, I'll do anything to protect him. I love him and his personality, and I won't let your selfish actions destroy that. She answered. Their faces were inches apart and their magic was flaring inside their bodies, but not enough to alert the others inside the house. You're really serious about this, aren't you? Hao asked. I am. I fear you more than I fear you. Hao I slightly widened at Anna's words so your threats don't fear me. You think you were a monster back then? See a pissed off Yo. You know your brother more than anyone else in this world, so you know how he is when he's angry. It's why he tries to belittle everything to keep his emotions in check. And if you were to attack me? Hao smirked at Anna before raising his hands in surrender. All right Anna, you win. I won't do anything bad ever again. He said with a chuckle, and if I ever see the young fried chicken girl, I'll apologize nicely. See? Everything's all right. He said with a smile. Anna rolled her eyes before opening the sliding door. Good. I'd like this conversation to stay a secret and I hope this doesn't affect our relationship that took so long for us to build. It won't. I know that your top priority is Yo, so I'm impressed that you did something so bold. However, it doesn't surprise me. You are Anna Kyoyama, after all. Your confidence in yourself is one of the many reasons why I approve of you to marry my brother. He said happily. Anna hid her blush as she entered the house. Shut up. She muttered. Hal followed behind her with a chuckle. The two entered the living room and Anna sat beside Yo, and Hal sat beside Orochimaru. There were many bags of popcorn and drinks for everyone to enjoy. The movie started, and even Orochimaru was immersed into the storyline. However, the author of this story can't tell you what happened in the new Purge movie, because he hasn't fucking seen it yet. Damn it. Ah. That was great, said Kisame as he ate the last bit of his popcorn. When's the next one coming out? Probably in the next 2 or 3 years, said Yo. Damn it, that's like 50 years from now. Weren't we supposed to do something after this? Asked Kisame. We were supposed to free Naruto-sama, said Anna. Oh yeah. So where the fuck is he? Asked Kisame. I don't know, said an orange orb from behind him. Kisame jumped at the voice and turned to see the orb. Damn it. Can't you do that somewhere else? Nearly gave me a heart attack. The shark man yelled. The orb merely laughed at Kisame's anger and floated towards the coffee table in the middle in the room. So, how's everyone doing? Hey, Naruto, Kuroka said with a wave, surprising everyone with how she addressed him. While she didn't say his name with an honorific earlier, her saying his name like nothing was interesting to them. We wanted to know where your seal is at. We're planning on releasing you from it now. Really? That's so nice. I'd cry if I can, but I haven't drunk anything in so long, so I have to conserve on water. Ahahaha. Kuroka giggled at her master's joke. So where is your jail? We'll free you from it tonight. Naruto was surprisingly quiet, putting everyone on edge. Naruto-sama, do you even know where your jail is? Asked Orochimaru. I know where it's at, it's just that I've planned this for so many years, it feels unreal that this is happening right now. Oho. Is that Issei? Said the orb as he floated towards the boy. Hi there, Mr. Naruto. Issei said awkwardly. It's Naruto-sama to you, said Hao with a glare. Oh yeah. Sorry about that. Good to see you again, Naruto-sama, Issei said with a bow. It's good to see you too, Issei. Are you coming with us to free me? Yes, sir. I want to see you in person when you're freed. I want to see the man who has brought this group of people together, answered the boy. That's so nice. When I'm free, we'll all go out to eat pickles. The orb did a happy twirl in the air. Sure, said Issei with a sweat drop. Anyway, my protege, you were asking me a question? Asked Naruto. I asked where is the seal that is containing you, Naya? Said Kuroka. Oh, hee. Well, you see. Underworld. Gremory territory, Dragon Mountain. A fucking Dragon Mountain. It had to be a fucking Dragon Mountain, said Issei as the group walked through the harsh terrain. Yup. Isn't it great? Said Naruto as he led the group to his jail. I take it as an honor that a dragon would want me to be in its treasure trove, makes me feel like a gem. Because you are a gem, Naruto, Naya. Said Kuroka as she batted her eyes at the orb. Ah, Kuroka. You make me blush. Said Naruto. Kuroka giggled while the other shivered, feeling a little uncomfortable around the two. So, Kuroka, how long have you known Naruto-sama? Asked Hao. I've known Naruto since I was 13 years old, which was 6 years ago. She said. I was so young, Naya. He asked you to be his queen when you were 13? He must have believed in the potential you had. He did, Naya, but I didn't accept his offer until I was 16. She said with a laugh. I didn't believe he was serious, nor did I trust a floating orb following me around everywhere I went, even if he did save me from hunters back when we first met, Naya. So he saved you and followed you all around all that time. Seems like he is persistent with a lot of his members. Said Hao with a laugh. What made you accept the offer, if you don't mind me asking? Asked Issei as he walked closer to the cat women. Kuroka smiled a little as she looked up at the sky. Personal reasons, but he had a lot going for him. He trained me, helped me out when I was in trouble, he was there for me when I felt lonely. He truly is a wonderful man. Everyone, even Lee, noticed how Kuroka was talking about Naruto. She was staring at the orb that floated in the sky, checking the surrounding area for any enemies, so he couldn't hear them. A light blush appeared over Kuroka's face as she thought back on all the times Naruto was there for her. So you love him? Asked Orochimaru, but he felt like he knew the answer already. Yes. She answered without hesitation. He's done so much for me, even when I didn't ask for it, even when I got angry at him, he still stayed. His loyalty he has for the people he cares about is amazing. I wish I would have accepted his request as his queen earlier, but I was young and stupid. I thought he had alternative intentions for me, but he just wanted me for who I was. It was because of that, and many more reasons, why I love him. But you haven't seen him in person. Said Anna. Can you really love someone you've never seen? My feelings aren't a lie, so it's possible. She answered. All we need to do now is free him, and I'll be able to see him for the first time. She said with wonder. What stopped you from telling him how you feel? Kuroka's smile instantly turned into a frown. Issei felt like he said something he shouldn't have, but Kuroka spoke before he could. Because of a certain female, and I'm sure she'll reveal herself soon. Kuroka said with a cat-like hiss. Her attitude did a complete 180, and she was smiling again when Naruto floated back down to the group. Find anything, Naruto? She asked with a peachy grin, acting as if the previous conversation didn't happen. Nope. Naruto saying everything is in the clear. Seems safe from here. Splendid. Said Kuroka with a hand clap, her cat hers perking up in happiness. Then lead the way. Same time. Satan's throne room. Cersex was relaxing after a long day at work by sipping some red wine. He hadn't heard word from Orochimaru yet, so he was keeping his emotions in check before the soon-to-be confrontation with the Citri. However, knowing that the Bael and Gremory, his and Naruto's own clans, were also a part of this whole fiasco put him on edge. Did his father sign off on this? Had they been hiding this from him for centuries, hiding behind fake smiles and loyalty? They knew that he had a great chemistry with the young Bael, so why would they agree to something like this? What could they have gained from sealing Naruto up and forgetting about him? He sighed and stopped thinking such wild thoughts. He needed some fresh air, that'll at least help him clear his mind. And so, he teleported from his throne to the outside of his large mansion, which was separated from any other house by a forest of trees and rivers, a perk of being acting Lucifer of the underworld. He sat down on a bench on his front yard porch and continued to sip his wine in peace, listening to the nature around him. Contentment started to fill his mind as he closed his eyes. He hadn't had such tranquility like this in a long time, since he found out Naruto was in a seal to be exact. Graphia opened the front door and stepped outside to see Cersex mediating, causing her to slightly break character and raise an eyebrow at her husband. Cersex didn't like to ponder too much, but when he did, he'd go outside, away from everyone. He couldn't hide from her, however, so she quietly approached him. "Lucifer-sama, are you all right?" she asked. She had been asking him that question a lot these past couple of weeks, like there was something troubling him. He didn't break his streak of keeping information from his wife as he smiled at her. "It's nothing, Graphia," he said, but she felt like the smile was forced. "I'm just expecting something that hasn't made it to me yet. But it will come to me in due time. Is there anything I can do to help?" she asked again, honestly wanting to help her husband. No, he said with a wave. "You've done enough for the day already, Graphia. Maybe you should take off early or something, you know." "I'm quite fine, Lucifer-sama. You don't have to worry about me," she said with a bow. He nodded towards her and continued his sipping of wine. She stood next to him, wanting to be there for him just in case he needed something. A butler, donned in a classic black suit, stepped outside holding a bottle of the same wine Cersex was drinking. The Lucifer of the underworld perked up at the man as he walked towards Cersex. Both Cersex and Graphia noticed that the butler's arms were twitching a little bit. "More wine, Lucifer-sama," said the man. Cersex raised an eyebrow at him, sensing hostility from the man. "Yes, thank you." Cersex thanked as he held out his glass. The butler popped the cork from the bottle and proceeded to pour wine into the Lucifer's glass. "Is everything all right?" Cersex asked the man, not liking the vibe he was getting from the devil. My brother died in a raiding game." Cersex's eyes widened. The butler stopped pouring Cersex his wine and twisted the cap back on. "I'm sorry to hear the... My brother. He died in that wretched raiding game system." Graphia narrowed her eyes at him while Cersex stood from his feet. "I'm sorry to hear that, sir, but please, don't do anything rash right now." And all this time, tears were pouring from the butler's eyes, but he had a scowl on his face that was directed at his Lucifer all this time. He could have been saved. In an act that surprised Cersex to the fullest, the butler jumped at him, a secret blade out of the sleeve of his suit. Graphia, with eyes filled with coldness, summoned her powers to create a wall of ice in front of her husband, blocking what would have been a fatal blow to Cersex's heart. The butler was shocked at Graphia's speed, and he couldn't react quickly enough again, as ice circled around his body, trapping him. "Let me go this instant!" shouted the man. "You shall be taken to trial for trying to kill the Lucifer. Your punishment will surely be death," Graphia said coldly. Cersex, however, couldn't process what was going on. Someone actually tried to attack him? Was what he did truly so bad that it pushed a man far enough to avenge his dead brother? "I seek justice. Justice for my brother," shouted the man. Guards quickly filled the scene, surrounding him. Maids stuck their heads outside the open door, or a window, trying to get a glimpse of what was going on. Just like how Revel Phoenix, the high-class devil, was saved, my brother should have been saved the same way. Along with the other devils. "You've shown your true colors, Lucifer." The guards pulled the screaming man away and Graphia recalled her wall of ice and checked her husband. "Lucifer-sama, are you okay? Did he hit you in any way?" Cersex ignored his wife, his focus on the blade that the butler dropped while he was being detained. He walked over to it and picked it up, inspecting the sharp point on it that was lathered in a deadly liquid. He tried to poison me. Cersex whispered, but Graphia heard him and analyzed the blade in Cersex's hand. Sure enough, the blade was dripping with poison. The man meant to stab Cersex, and if he didn't get a good look at him the first time, the poison would have surely finished the job. Cersex gulped as he set the blade down. One of his own servants tried to kill him. What have I done? He said to himself as he grabbed a handful of his hair, gripping it with a lot of force. Graphia looked towards her husband in worry. She hadn't seen him like this since the war so long ago when he was stressing about battle plans and directing his legion to victory. Those were dark times when devils would kill devils, defending in their beliefs. While she wanted to say something, Graphia let her husband have his moment for himself. He had a lot on his mind and he didn't need anything distracting him from achieve his tranquility again. A Lucifer-sama? Graphia turned around and glared at the maid that called for him. The maid shrunk under the pressure of Graphia's glare, but Cersex saved her by placing a hand on his wife's shoulder. It's a light, he said, but the usual excitement and childish tone he had in his voice was gone. She nodded and took a step behind her husband. What is it? He asked the maid. Why, you have a small visitor, said the maid, still affected by Graphia's ki. The maid pointed to her feet and Cersex raised an eyebrow once he noticed the small snake beside her feet. He recognized it as one of Orochimaru's snakes and his mode perked up, but only slightly. Do you have a message for me, little one? He asked the snake. The snake regurgitated a scroll from its mouth. Cersex shivered. Just how did Orochimaru fit those large things into his poor snake servants? After the scroll was out of the snake's body, it slithered away into the garden. The maid handed Cersex a handkerchief, in which he thanked her for, and picked up the scroll. He opened it and read it content with curiosity. Is something the matter, Lucifer-sama? Asked Graphia. I have somewhere to go right now, said Cersex as he destroyed the scroll. So he's at the Dragon Mountain then, or course a dragon would keep the treasure box to add to its collection. Hold the fort down while I'm gone. I'll be back soon. Or course, she said without question as he disappeared. However, she was curious about where he was going, but it wasn't for her to find out about yet. Dragon Mountain. The group continued their streak into the mountains, headed towards the resting place of Naruto's seal. We'll be there soon, so be prepared, Naruto said. Prepared for what, Naruto-sama? Asked Lee. All he got was a chuckle as a reply. Issei's boosted gear appeared on Issei's arm, surprising the boy partner. Do you see that fruit on that tree over there? Issei looked around until he saw what Drake was talking about. A tree full of purple leaves and green fruit with purple spots entered his sights. Yeah, what about it? That's a special fruit that some dragons eat to survive. It should do you good to pack a few of those, seeing as I'm your sacred gear. It may help with your training to eat something that sustains dragons. Drake explained. Yeah, but where could I put them? I don't have my backpack with me, said Issei. I'll help you, Anna said quietly. Issei nodded to Anna in thanks as he picked some of the fruit off of the tree, while Anna sealed them into her personal magic seal. After they were done, it was silent for a while, but the sound of a magic circle appearing by Issei's ear caught everyone's attention. Issei. The voice of Rias Gremory came from the seal. Where are you? It's past midnight and mother is worried sick. Oh. Rias. Hey. Issei dragged out the hay, not knowing what else to say. Let's put this on loudspeaker, shall we? Said Kisame as he pointed his finger towards the magic seal. His own magic floated towards the seal and enhanced the volume of it. Who was that? Asked Rias. The seal was loud enough for everyone to hear now. That was the television. He lied hesitantly. Orochimaru rolled his eyes at the lack of Issei's lying skills. Evenly could have come up with something on the fly. The television? So you're at their house again? Everyone raised an eyebrow at how she referred to them. The fuck is that supposed to mean? Kisame whispered to Hao, only getting a shrug in response. Yeah. Hao has on this documentary about the Mayan people and stuff. You know he's a real history junkie. Issei answered. That's nice, but you need to come home now. We have school in the morning in Asia and your parents are worried. Rias said sternly. You just gonna let her walk all over you like that? Kisame whispered into Issei's ear, causing him to twitch in annoyance. Tell them I'm alright. I'll be back at the house tomorrow. He said as he pushed Kisame away, but Rias sensed his annoyance in his voice and thought it was for her. Do you want to talk to me? She asked dangerously. I mean, you're always with them all the time. I guess you just like them more than us, huh? Bucho, that isn't what I meant. Issei shouted. Kisame snickered a little bit, his job done. That's how I feel, Issei. You're always with them and I've been trying to get closer with you, but it's like you don't even want to anymore. This is better than love and hip-hop. Yo said with Anna nodding. Bucho, like I just said, that isn't what I meant. Stop taking this so seriously. I like hanging out with them because I like hanging out with them. That's it. What's so bad about that? Everything. You train with them more, spend more time with them, talk to them more. It's like you don't even care that the rest of us are trying our hardest to welcome you and Asia into the group. It's like you don't even want to be with us. I never asked to be with you all. He shouted. Rias tried to retort, but Issei continued speaking. It's like you never even knew me before all this shit happened. If you were so fucking interested in me, why didn't you try to get to know me before waiting on me to die? Ha! Answer me that. Issei, you know that I regret what I did to you, but you have to understand. She shouted. I understand everything, and that's the problem. If Lee would have found me before Rainier would have, I would have never died and Yuma would still be alive. But you waited for me and Yuma to die, so I didn't have a choice in joining you. I was forced into this shit. Wow. Kuroka whispered, genuinely impressed at Issei. It seemed like the boy had everything handled now. He was maturing from what she had learned of him through Naruto. He's coming along quite nicely, Naya. Issei took a few deep breaths to calm him down, but he was glad about what he said. He understood everything. The way he was revived was fucked up, and she had to realize that she couldn't just do whatever she wanted with him. He had a heart and a soul. He wasn't a slave. That's really how you feel. Rias muttered, and everyone could hear the sadness in her voice. Issei could have sworn he heard her hic like she was holding back tears. Sigh, listen, Rias. Everyone heard Rias gasped in shock at hearing him say her name. I'll see you tomorrow. Tell everyone not to wait up for me. And he stopped his magic output to the seal and cut the call. He sighed in stress, feeling a headache slowly approaching, but he lifted his head when the sound of clapping filled the area. I have to say, idiot pervert, you did well for yourself, said Orochimaru as he applauded the boy. Maybe you aren't as big of an idiot as I thought. Really? Really? Said Issei, a smile slowly creeping its way on his face. You grew some backbone right there, pervert, said Kisame as he slapped his back. Issei flinched at Kisame's strength, but he knew he did it for good reason. I'm impressed, and I'm sure everyone else here agrees. Naya, a strong man shouldn't be scared to set his foot down and lay down the law, said Kuroka, placing a hand on her hip. Very impressive, Naya. Thanks everybody, he said with a cheeky grin as he rubbed the back of his head. Good job, Issei, but we'll have to continue to congratulate you on a later date. We're here, said the orb impersonating Naruto. The team stopped in front of a large cave. An eerie feeling was coming from it, and everyone was put on edge. Is a dragon in there? Asked Issei, pointing towards the cave entrance. It sure is. The voice of Cersex entered everyone's ears as he appeared from a magic circle. And not just any dragon either. Ah, Lucifer-sama. So good to see that you got my message, and just in time too. Said Orochimaru as he shook the man's hand. Glad you sent it. You all were about to enter the cave of Tannen, a dragon that is also an ultimate class devil. If you interrupted him in his sleep, he may have killed you. Cersex said with a laugh. Oh, I have a feeling my peerage would have been able to put up a fight. Said the orb. Cersex stopped laughing and inspected the orb just like he did the blade not too long ago. So this was you all along, huh? Naruto. The Satan said. Yup, said Naruto as he danced around Cersex. It's been so long. How's the family, Cersex? Cersex raised an eyebrow at Naruto's friendly tone, but thought little of it. They're good, but they won't be when I confront them about what's happening. You shouldn't have gone through this, Naruto. I'm sorry for not finding out sooner. Oh, it's alright. Naruto sang out as he danced around Cersex. Nothing I didn't plan for, anyway. And this is your queen, the legendary Kuroka, the Nekishu, killer of her previous master? He asked as he took in Kuroka's face. She hissed at the man and scooted behind Naruto. Yup. But that story isn't what you thought. We'll talk later about it. Say hello to Issei too. Issei? My Ryatan's pawn? What are you doing here? Asked the Lucifer. I'm close with Naruto-sama's peerage. I just wanted to be there when he was revived. Answered Issei truthfully. Cersex nodded at Issei, but felt a bit of suspension. He ignored it for now, hoping that he wasn't overthinking the situation. Well, I think I should be the one to handle this. Said Cersex as he stepped in front of the peerage. He took in a deep breath and... Tannen. You've got visitors. A large yawn came from deep within the cave. Footsteps shook the ground as Tannen, the ultimate devil-dragon hybrid, stepped out of his cave. He's as tall as Spirit of Fire. How muttered as he took in the sight of the legendary dragon. Cersex? What do you want? Asked the purple dragon as he bent down to the smaller devils. Inside of your cave, you have a small treasure box that we need. It means more than it looks. Answered Cersex. Oh, I know actually what you're talking about. The dragon said with a laugh. I've tried opening that box for 15 years, but the only thing I did to it was dent it up. I put it in a specific spot just in case I felt like trying to open it again. Wait here. Said the dragon as he retreated back into his cave. Well, that was easy. Said Issei. He thought they were going to have to fight a dragon, and then dig through all of its treasure it collected over the years. Tannen's a nice dragon. I'm glad he was the one that picked it up, or we may have needed to fight a dragon before they let us borrow his or her treasure. Said Cersex. Maybe we should take some of his stuff while he isn't looking, Naya. Said Kuroka with dollar signs in her eyes. Ho, calm down, my protege. It won't be wise to fight a dragon at the moment. However, make sure to write that down in our planner. Naruto said with an ominous laugh, Kuroka following suit. It took a while, but Tannen came stomping back with his palm held open. In the middle of it was a small treasure box, the same box that sealed Naruto centuries ago. Thanks a lot. Kuroka said with a smile as she climbed into Tannen's palm and got the box. Issei made sure to burn the image of Kuroka's ass into memory. No problem. Tell me what's in there when you open it, will ya? Asked the dragon. Oh, my future husband is in here. Said Kuroka with a smile. Said Tannen, the only one hearing Kuroka's decree. Alright, time to go. Said Kuroka hurriedly, and she jumped out of Tannen's palm. Naruto, where to next? Well, we need a place big enough so we can make a lot of seals. said the orb in wonder. The school gym should be big enough for that, said Orochimaru. Then I guess that's our next landing spot, said Yo as he made a magic seal. Thanks a lot for the box, Tannen, he said with a wave. Sure, he said as he watched the group disappear. Kuo Academy Gym. The group arrived in the middle of the gym with their master's jail in hand. So what now, Naruto-sama? Asked Orochimaru. Ha. I've got it, said the orb. It surprised everyone when the orb spit into 10 individual orbs. 9 of the orbs entered everyone's body, filling them with the knowledge of how to free him. That's a lot of seals. How muttered as his mind pictured all the seals they would have to make. And we have to do all of this with the blood we got? Asked Lee. Yup, laughed Naruto. Now get to it. The sooner I'm out, the sooner I'll be able to eat Pickles. They all rolled their eyes at his demand. Kuroka summoned all the bags of blood they had and poured them all into individual bowls. Hey, where did you get this other Bael blue? Somebody lent it to us, shouted Naruto with an awkward laugh. Yup. Hey. What a nice person they were. Cersex rolled his eyes again before following the mental instructions that Naruto gave everyone. Everyone was given a small paintbrush to make the correct seals with. Kisame and Orochimaru were in charge of Sona's blood, Anna, and Hao was in charge of Rias' blood, Cersex, and Yo was over Serorg's blood, and Kuroka and Issei was over Cersex's blood. Naruto's orb grew small arms and picked up a paintbrush to make the seals with the blood of Naruto Bael. He wanted to make sure that Cersex didn't have anything to do with this blood. After a long hour of painting the basketball court of seals, everything was done. The treasure box was in the middle of the court, surrounded by thousands of seals perfectly painted by everyone. The seals circled around the box in a large arc, with 7 smaller circles around the perimeter of it all. What are the small circles for, Naruto-sama? Asked Lee. Those, my rook, is for my peerage members, answered Naruto without his usual playful tone. 7 devils sealed me in that box all those centuries ago, so 7 people shall free me. Those who free me must have a direct correlation with me, so concentrate on your evil pieces inside of you while freeing me. So that's why you waited all this time to free yourself, muttered Orochimaru in amazement. You had to match all of conditions you were put under during the sealing, so you waited for the right people. Correct. I had to wait until 7 people, who I deemed strong, whose ideals co-align with my ideals. You all have your past, your own struggles you hid from everyone. You've told me them, and I relate to you all so much. I once had to hide my true emotions. I once didn't believe in my own race. I once, and still, hate the society that I was born in. I once felt like everything in this world was a lie. I'd had to let someone I loved go so that they could prosper, even if they betrayed me. All these things you all went through. I went through the same thing. I relate with you all so much, there's a reason why I chose you all as my peerage members. That was deep, muttered Yo, remembering his own demons that he hid from everyone. While he went through his own troubles, Naruto had gone through so much as well. So much, in fact, that he could relate to everyone's pain in some type of way. It's beautiful in a way, said Orochimaru, but it's a dark beauty. Pain and suffering, drawing people together. It's like an evil story that could have been a lost chapter of the Bible, but there is much to learn from it. You guys are really trying to make me cry with all this sentimental shit, said Kisame with a couple of hicks. Samahata whined with its master in sadness. Naruto snickered. It's alright to cry, Kisame. I wish I could cry, but I can't. I had to preserve the water that was already inside of me while I was sealed. Wait. Kuroka stepped close to the small orb. You always told me that you were asleep for most of your time in the seal, only waking up a few times every century. Were you conscious the whole time? I was. Kuroka didn't even try to hide the tears that started to flood her eyes. You told me that, just so we wouldn't worry about you, didn't you? Her ears sulked down in sadness as a tear went down her cheek. That's insane. Anna closed her eyes. She hadn't felt this type of sadness in a long time. To be alone like that. I thought I had it bad. Yo wrapped an arm around her. She snuggled into the hug and placed her face into his shoulder. If she was going to cry, she didn't want everyone to see it. Damn it. How was sad, but also angry. The devils that sealed his master would pay with their lives, no matter who they were. They were going to die. Lee was outright crying, holding nothing back. For you to do something, like this, it's incredible, Naruto-sama. He shouted in despair. Issei had to look away from the scene, the sadness starting to seep into his own tear ducts. Cersex shook his head while taking a deep breath. His friend was subjugated to a punishment that didn't even make sense. He was going to cause hell once Naruto was freed and gave him the okay. In order for you all to free me, you must step in your own, individual circle, and send your magic into the seals. Concentrate on your evil pieces, and it'll register with my king piece. You have a king piece? Cersex asked with curiosity. You must remember, Cersex, that the evil piece system wasn't as solid as it is today. I received a king piece with my peerage, but it didn't increase my power or anything like that, so you won't have to worry. Naruto said with a laugh. No, I understand. Forgive me for interrupting. You've spent enough time in that box. I say it's time for you to be free. Said Cersex with a smile. The orb nodded at Cersex before focusing back on his peerage. I thank you all for everything. You've done a lot for me, More than you know. Let's continue to do fun things when I'm out, alright. Naruto's usual voice was back and everyone smiled at it. They all nodded at the orb as they made their way into the smaller circles. This technique isn't hard. Just focus. You all can do it. The orb made its way towards the box before phasing back into it. Orochimaru shook his head, focusing back on the task at hand. Alright, everyone. This is simple. We can do this. Keep your emotions in check until after he's out. Then you can do whatever you want. They all agreed before sitting on the floor and concentrating on their magic. Their auras surrounded them as they focused in on their evil pieces inside of them. Just let it flow. The blood on the court started to glow white as their magic made it to the box. The seals started to recede towards the box, creating cracks in with every set of seals that made contact with the box. Wind started to pick up in the gym, but that didn't stop the concentrating devils as they kept pumping their magic into the seals. What's going on? Shouted Issei as the wind started to really pick up. He had to cover his face with his arms and placed his right foot behind him to keep from falling over. He's being released. The seals are countering the original as we speak. Shouted Cersex over the winds. Just let it flow. Lee took another deep breath as his small reserves of magic were stretched more than it ever was before. The seal's white light glowed even stronger as they made their way into the box. Cracks started form on the box. White light was bursting from it as the magic of Naruto's peerage members started to dismantle it from the outside. The seals flowed into the box until the last seat of seals phased into the box. The box opened. A huge, blinding while light mixed with a little red shot out of the open box. The light beam hit the ceiling and started to crack it from the pressure it gave off. All of Naruto's followers stepped back as they watched the beam grow in strength. In the middle of the beam, the body of a young man started to form. The light was stopping them from seeing him clearly, but over time, the light beam seemed to shot around him, but the force of the beam kept the man suspended in the air. His eyes were closed, his blonde locks flowing in the wind. Wearing black shoes, black cargo shorts, and plain red shirt, Naruto was finally revealed to the world. Hell yeah! Shouted Kisame as he watched the spectacle in front of him. Seems it worked, said Orochimaru with a smile. Everyone was shouting praises that they revived their master, but Kuroka was silent as she took in the form of Naruto Bael. He's beautiful, she whispered to herself. The front of his body was turned in her direction, so when his eyes opened to see his soft, blue eyes, her heart jumped as a full blush grew across her face. Her body shook as the two stared each other in the eyes. Even through all the light, Kuroka could have sworn she saw him smile. However, her keen eyesight also picked up on something bad. Her face went from one of awe to one of confusion as she watched what was happening to his body. Hey! She said, but no one heard her. Hey! Hey! Something's wrong. That got everyone's attention as they looked back at Naruto's body. Their eyes piercing through the light beam, everyone's heart sunk when they noticed that wrinkles started to grow all over Naruto's body. His face seemed to lose moisture by the second as cracks appeared over his skin. His blonde hair started to fade, far from the golden blonde it once was. What's happening? Yo muttered as he watched Naruto's body transform from a healthy young man into an older man. As time kept going on, the lack of nutrition in Naruto's body kept growing. His bones were more pronounced in his arms. His legs were super skin. His jawline was filled with cracked skin and dark marks. The light beam finally died out, and Naruto's body started to fall from the sky. Thinking quickly, Lee jumped up and saved Naruto from hitting the hard, wooden ground. Everyone ran up to Naruto to see that he was unresponsive at all. His eyes were closed and they couldn't tell if he was breathing. Move! Shouted Orochimaru as he pushed his way through everyone. He summoned a small blade of wind and cut Naruto's shit off, revealing his deadly skinny chest. His ribs were about to burst from the dry skin that clung to it. His stomach was small like he hasn't eating ages, in which it hasn't. Malnutrition. That one word hit everyone like a brick to the face. He hasn't eaten and so that his body is weak. We need to feed him now. He doesn't have enough energy to eat. He can barely open his mouth to breath. Shouted Anna with a worried face, fully breaking her character as usually stoic to everything. Her face was flooded with tears as she took in the sight of her near-dead master. He needs to go home now. Orochimaru, don't you have some medical equipment left at the house? Shouted Kuroka with her own tears as she hugged her king. I do, but I don't know if it'll be enough. He needs food, water, and blood. The weakened seal had its own consequences. His body wasn't properly preserved over the years. We can't even use magic to heal him. Immortals can die from malnutrition. You think T. Kuroka slapped the sputtering Orochimaru hard. Get him to the house now, and save my king. A large magic circle appeared below the desperate peerage. Issei, thinking quickly, jumped in before they all disappeared, headed back to the house, leaving a shocked Cersex. The next day noon. Issei made his way down the stairs, and into the living room. He was the last person to see Naruto before being kicked out by Kuroka, just like how she did everyone else. He was hooked up with many wires and tubes entering his body. She was doing whatever she could with her chakra, but it wasn't clear yet if he would survive. Issei made his way to one of the available spots on the couch. Everyone was sitting in the living room, distraught that their king was in such a state. Nobody dared to say a word. Even Kisame, who would usually use this opportunity to take the TV remote for himself, didn't dare to. Everyone was depressed. The man that saved them from their past was struggling to stay alive from his time in the seal. If they would have waited any sooner, the idea of it was a hard pill to swallow. So when Issei reached for the remote, nobody stopped him. They were surprised, yes. It even brought some of them out of their dark thoughts. Issei gripped the remote in hand before turning it on. Sometimes it makes me sad though, said Red Andy being gone. I have to remind myself that some birds aren't meant to be caged. Their feathers are just too bright. And when they fly away, the part of you that knows it was a sin to lock them up does rejoice. But still, the place you live in is that much more drab and empty that they're gone. I guess I just miss my friend. Read, Morgan Freeman, The Shawshank Redemption. Chapter 10, Rias vs. Gremory. 2 days later. Kuo Academy. Cardio. Cardio. Everyone loves cardio. Sang Yo. He was taking a job around town, orders from Anna, with small weights around his wrist and ankles. Phew. Said Yo as he stopped for a second and wiped his brow with the back of his hand. Halfway there. He muttered to himself. He looked up to see Kuo Academy, and sensed Orochimaru's magic in the school. I hope he's having a good day. Yo said as he started to jog again. Inside the school, Orochimaru was sitting at his desk, lost in space. He had handed out a quick quiz for his students to finish at the beginning of class before entering in the land of daydreams. Mr. Suki? Said one of his female students. Orochimaru's head perked up as he regained focus. Yes? He asked. We're finished. We finished a couple of minutes ago and tried to get your attention, but you weren't listening to us. Oh, forgive me. Said Orochimaru as he stood up from his desk and went around the classroom to pick up the papers. Rias, from her spot of the classroom, raised an eyebrow at the man as he silently went around the room. He didn't even give her any type of cocky smile when he came to her desk to collect her paper. Sona, Akino, and Tsubaki also noticed something was wrong with Orochimaru. Mr. Suki, is something wrong? Asked Sona. Orochimaru at first didn't say anything. He placed the papers down on his desk and sighed. Everyone in the room looked at his back in worry for the man. They never have seen him act like this. Does anyone here believe in the supernatural? Rias, Akino, Tsubaki, and Sona's heads snapped up as they looked at the man in surprise. He couldn't be doing what they thought he was going to do. The supernatural? You mean ghosts and spirits? Said a boy. Yes. Anything along those lines. Said Orochimaru as he turned back to the class. His face, while he usually had a frown on his face, had a sad frown that made everyone wonder even more what was wrong. Come on, Mr. Suki. Aren't scientists in denial of the supernatural? Do you believe in the supernatural? That wasn't the question. Orochimaru answered, but it was filled with seriousness that shut his students' mouth close in fear. I have my thoughts about it. Everyone in the room looked at Tsubaki with curiosity. I'm curious about where you are taking this, sensei. So, you believe in it? Asked Orochimaru, following her ploy. Somewhat, but for this conversation, let's say that I do believe in the supernatural. Said Tsubaki as she laced her fingers together. So, if you believe in the supernatural, like you believe in a deity, what's the point in science? Rias' jaw was slightly ajar as she looked at Orochimaru, along with many other students. Was this the same man that preached about the wonders of science and its findings every day? I don't understand. Said Tsubaki with a head tilt. Orochimaru chuckled to himself. All right, maybe I should explain a little. He sat back down in his chair and pushed the quiz papers to the side. Why do we go through the things that we go through, both good and bad? I don't know. Answered Tsubaki. Exactly. I don't know is the answer and also a problem I once had trouble accepting. He said. What do you mean by that? Aren't things just bound to happen? Asked another student. We can't control the world. But shouldn't the deity that you pray to at night be able to control what happens in your life? He asked. The student lowered her head as she couldn't answer back. I understand that we grow from certain situations in life, situations that are different for us all, but why do they happen, and how do they happen? Cause and effect is the most human definition for that. Said Sona. True, but every cause has a beginning. What was the first cause, and therefore, the first effect? What started it all? And why must we suffer or benefit from them? He asked. I don't think that's something for us to find out about, sensei, said a male student that's above us. Even though we don't know these things, I think we should just live. Your outlook on the process of life is interesting, but your words will only be an opinion until proven, which will never happen. Science can never pinpoint why I like eating eggs. Science won't ever answer why I love science. Science will never explain to us why we were born. So what is the purpose of continuing a subject that only makes us continue to ask more questions? His words were felt in every soul listening to his words. A heavy silence filled the room as Orochimaru's question raged inside of everyone's mind, even to the point of questioning why they were in this class. So, what is your point, Mr. Suki? Asked Rias, finally breaking the tension with her voice. Orochimaru sighed and ran a hand through his hair. I've never told you all the real reason why I wanted to become a scientist. And, depending on your morals, you would either agree that my goal would have helped or hurt the world. And your goal was? Asked Rias. How to gain immortality. Immortality? Why would you want that? Asked Sona. Life is short. I won't be able to understand everything I want during this short life, and I won't be able to finish life with the people I started it with. He muttered. My parents both died when I was young. Double homicide in the lab we had at our house. I found the bodies and all I felt was sadness. After that, I felt hatred towards life itself because of how easy it was for it to be taken away, but people still valued it more than anything in the world. I hated my skin, for it was too weak to handle the puncture of the smallest of needles. I hated my mind because it was easily succumbed in sadness when I saw my parents' body. And ultimately, I hated my soul because I didn't know where it would go when I would die. Is there such thing as heaven? Hell? Is there even such thing as nothing? That's very deep, said another student. It was, and for my young mind, it was a realization that was too deep for me. So, I studied the body for decades, understanding its weakness and strengths. I went insane while trying to find out what life meant. What did it mean for the boy whose life changed after a car wreck? For the girl who was alone all her life? What is the life of an atheist, believer, or anything? It was a very dark time for me. So did you find an answer? Asked Sona. No, because my answer isn't even an answer, it's an opinion. My belief is that humans live on through knowledge we learn from our surroundings. Our bodies can never be immortal, but our knowledge of the world will carry on. Even if it is twisted and manipulated from the original, it can still outlive us. He explained. But that doesn't answer the question as to why do things happen the way they do, said a student. Because there isn't an answer. Maybe you've been manipulated by someone all your life, maybe your God has blessed you or the devil has cursed you, or maybe the only reason why you found that large amount of money on the ground is because a child went through their mother's purse and dropped the only money they had, the money she would use to pay their bills and finally be free from debt. You can say that cause and effect run the world, but I also believe that coincidences, blessing, being at the right place at the right time, and more, runs this world. The bell rang, signaling everyone that class was over. Orochimaru leaned back into his chair with a smile. I'm glad I had this conversation with you all. Just because of that, everyone will get a 100 on your quiz, regardless of what you put as your answers. The class cheered in happiness, glad that they got a free 100. Thank God, because I didn't study at all, shouted a student. Expect for you, Dan. Orochimaru destroyed the boy's happiness as he sulked out of the room. Orochimaru chuckled evilly as he watched him leave the room. Ria stepped in front of his desk, causing him to turn to her. He noticed her face was filled with curiosity and felt like she was going to ask a question he didn't want to hear. Are you all right? She asked. Isn't this a surprise? The princess is worried about me. he said with his usual grin. I must remember this moment. You should, she said as she reached into her backpack. She grabbed something and threw the object at him. He caught it easily and inspected the object in his hands, noticing that it was the same pill bottle he gave her weeks ago. Those will help you sleep better. You look like you need it with those bags under your eyes. Orochimaru's grin grew at the Gremory heiress, who was countering it with her own cocky grin. Ho ho ho. Seems the princess has learned some. That was a nice move. Thanks, she said, but her smirk twisted into a frown. But are you really okay? That wasn't like the usual you today. I'll be all right, he said with a wave. Head to your next class, Gremory. Everything will work out, he finished, stealing Yo's motto. If you say so. She gave her teacher one last glance, burning the image of his troubled face into her mind, before leaving the room. She was walking with Akino down the hall to their next class when they heard all the mummers. It happened all the time, of course, so they both ignored it. Everyone I'd whispered at them, the two queens of the school, as they casually walked down the hallways. They all thought that they were the perfect people with perfect lives. Rias silently chuckled at the thought. They didn't know anything. Bucho. Rias looked towards her best friend, whose usual smile was replaced with a frown as she looked in front of them. Rias followed her eyes and tensed when she saw Issei headed their way. He was with a couple of guys and was talking nonchalantly. However, Rias' heart started to beat faster as they were about to cross paths. Issei's eyes were darting around while talking with his group, but they stopped once they found her eyes. Awkwardness filled her stomach as they entered a staring contest, but she couldn't turn away, even if she wanted to. Akino frowned at Rias' troubled face as they both stopped their walking and waited to be confronted by the boy. The group that Issei was with admired the two beauties, hearts filling their eyes as they slowly made their way around them. She smiled at the group and waved, but the smile was obviously fake, or at least, the real smile she was hiding was only meant for a certain brown-haired pawn. Issei was the last person in the group to pass by Rias. In a desperate act to talk to her pawn, Rias put a hand on Issei's shoulder. "Ise, can we talk?" "Not right now," and shrugged her hand off of his shoulder. He ignored the shocked faces of his friends and continued his walk. Rias watched him walk away with worry. "I'm not getting anywhere like this. That was the first time he's spoken to me ever since we had our argument," she muttered sadly. "He'll come around, Bucho. All he needs is time," said Akino, placing a hand of concern on her King's shoulder. "Just leave him be." "I don't know, Akino. I've let him had so much time alone. I think that maybe what's making it easier for him to push away from us." Rias answered. I need an idea to compete," she said as she continued her walking. "Compete for what? And against who?" asked Akino as she followed her best friend. Rias growled as an image of peerage of the mysterious king entered her mind. "Against those guys on the outskirts of town. I need to find a way to get his attention. Well, the only thing I can think about is seduction, but Issei has changed in his perverted ways since being a part of your peerage," stated Akino. "True, but even if he was still a pervert, I wouldn't want to do that. It may cause more harm than good," Rias said as she rubbed her chin and thought, "I'm sure something will pop up in my mind. For now, however, we'll leave him alone." After school. Naruto's peerage house. Orochimaru quietly knocked on a closed door. After hearing a small enter, Naya, he opened the door and closed it as silently as possible. He sighed as he took in the sight before him. Naruto, his master, was in a bed hooked up too many machines to sustain his health. Kuroka was pressed against Naruto, under the covers with him. She had Naruto's head lying on her stomach, allowing her easy access to his hair, in which she played with to pass the time. "Still unconscious?" asked Orochimaru as he set his briefcase on the floor. "Yes. I haven't gotten a response from him yet, His breathing is getting better though. That's a good thing, Naya. She muttered sadly. Alright, let me check up on everything now. He said as he walked to the right side of the bed where all the machines were. Alright, the leftover blood of Seiryu and Seroarg is still flowing properly. Yup, Naya, and the blood the Lee donated is flowing into his left arm, while the rest is in his right. Good. Oxygen mask? Fully functional, but I had to reposition it when it was rubbing the side of his cheeks. He started to bleed a lot, but I healed it with my churka. His skin is easy to break, apparently. Sigh. His daily nutrient injections? I handled that before you came here, Naya. It went smoothly. His food tube? Also working, but I hate the smell of that disgusting paste food, Naya. Water pump? There were a few complications early on today with that too. I kinda it wasn't on purpose. Pressed the wrong button so he was injected with more water in his stomach, sorry? I used my chakra to get some of it out, so he doesn't need any more water for the rest of the day. But you didn't expose him too much to your chakra, right? His body can't handle that right now. I didn't, Naya. I know that he's fragile. Alright. What about his waist? He hasn't gone poo-poo yet, Naya. Orochimaru sighed while Kuroka giggled softly. It seemed like everything was working fine for their master at the moment. Now, all they needed was for Naruto to wake up and explain everything to him. Well then I'll continue to leave him in your care. I'll be downstairs with everyone else for the time being. Thanks, Snaky, Naya. Orochimaru rolled his eyes and picked up his briefcase, leaving the cat girl with their master. He entered his own room and changed his clothes, back in his usual tunic and long purple rope tied around his waist. He made his way downstairs to the common room to see Anna enjoying her control over the TV, while Kisame was sitting in his recliner grumbling. This show is fucking stupid. I don't get why you like watching Housewives. Most of these hoes ain't even married. The blue man shouted. Shut up. I have the remote. You be quiet. Anna countered quietly. Ugh, just wait until my night with the remote. Kisame said with a growl. We'll be watching Animal Planet all day. Well, until that day comes, shut up. She said again and turned the volume up. Seems you two are getting along, said Orochimaru as he sat down on one of the couches. Your eyes deceive you, Orochimaru. I thought you were smarter than that, said Anna. Yeah, I don't know what's going on in that fucked up mind of yours, because I'll never be friends with this housewife watching, always frowning, super boring, little girl. Kisame said while crossing his arms. I honestly don't see how yo can put up with you. Orochimaru kept his curiosity to himself when he saw Anna flinch slightly at Kisame's words. Kisame had his eyes close, so he didn't see it, but Orochimaru saw it and smirked. So the girl does have some weak points within herself. Where is everyone else, if you two don't mind me asking? Orochimaru said, making sure to store his new information on Anna in his head. Lee and Yo went running or some shit. Ho went to the store. Kisame laughed at how he referred to how is the blonde still unconscious. Yeah, but it seems like his recovery is going smoothly. He should wake up one of these days. All we need to be is patient with him. Well, he needs to wake up sooner rather than later. I've always wanted to fight him. Samahata shrieked in agreement. Seems like you're down with the idea as well, he. You can't fight a cripple, dumbass, said Anna as she sipped some of her soda from a glass. He can't move. How do you think that he can fight? It's Naruto. He'll figure some shit out. He's always has. I mean, look at what he's done now. He probably has one of those backup plans. Kisame put air quotes around backup with a grin. In your defense, Kisame, I hope you're right, because he doesn't look good. He's gotten some of his color back, but I don't know how long he'll be like this honestly. He looks so weak. Anna muttered, remembering how Naruto's bone almost seemed to break out of the skin containing them. I hope he gets better soon. The door opened and Hao entered the house with a few bags in hand. He went to kitchen and set them down, but not before nodding his head to everyone as his own way of saying hello. Is he still asleep? Asked Hao. Yes. Kuroka's watching him. Orochimaru answered. I'll go up now then. He said as he climbed up the stairs and walked to Naruto's room. He opened the door to see Kuroka clutching onto Naruto's body, humming soft tunes while playing with his hair. Her ears perked up and she smiled at Hao. Hello, Naya. Came to talk to Naruto? She asked. I didn't come to talk to a man that won't answer me. I just came to check up on him, that's all. He said as he walked to the left side of Naruto's bed. Well, I'm about to go get something to eat. You wouldn't mind staying here for a while, Naya? Asked Naruto's protege. Sure. He answered plainly. Kuroka nodded and slowly got out of the bed, making an effort not to disturb Naruto's body. After she was free, she quietly made her way out of the room and headed downstairs. Hao took a seat in one of the chairs that were against the wall. They had all used them to watch over Naruto the night he was freed. He wasn't responding at all to their calls and couldn't move an inch. They all assisted Orochimaru, helping him inject Naruto with the nutrients he needed as well as hooking him up to all the machines that kept Naruto alive until he could support himself. Hao glared at all the machine filling the room. The periodic noises they made were starting to irritate him. He looked down at the tubes that were planted into Naruto's body with disdain. Lee's blood, which matched with Naruto's own blood type, was currently entering Naruto's body, which would help with the recovery process. He looked better than how he did a few days ago, but to Hao. Why? Hao clenched his fist as stared at Naruto. Why are you so weak? He could hear the spirit of fire growling from within him in agreement. Hao glared at his master. He was unconscious, so he couldn't feel the ki that was emanating from Hao, which was starting to grow second by second. This isn't the man I imagined. You aren't the man I thought you were. My expectations for you were so high. Hao sighed and covered his face with his hand, and now all I see is trash. Naruto's body took in a sharp intake of air, startling Hao, but he went back to taking his slowly, periodic breaths. Hao shook his head as he continued his one-sided conversation. You taught me more than my parents did. You've done so much for me. Teaching me how to control myself and changing my thoughts on the world. But now that I see you, it's like a majority of that knowledge is steadily going down the drain. You said you were strong. A war hero, this isn't what that looks like. Naruto's heart monitor continued to beep slowly. Hao glared at the machine with hatred. You've succumbed to living off the inventions of lowly humans. You're depending on them. While I understand that you were trapped in that seal for a long time, you could have found other people to help you sooner. Am I supposed to feel bad for you even though you purposely put yourself through such torture? Hao's hand moved closer and closer to Naruto's neck as he spoke. Suddenly, the door to the Naruto's room bust opened and Kuroka, followed by Kisame, Orochimaru, and Anna, entered the room with their magic ready and at hand. What the hell are you doing? Shouted Kuroka, glaring daggers at the older Asakura. I swear, Hao, I will kill you if you make one more move. Hao glared at the cat girl, summoning his magic as well. The head of the spirit of fire appeared over Hao, and it growled out at the group. You don't understand. I understand that you're trying to kill him just because he isn't what you thought he would be. Now move away from him. Now. Kuroka's magic started to pour from her body rapidly, and it surprised Hao at how much she had. He looked back at Naruto, taking in his sick form, before glaring at the group near the entrance again. Do you not see what this man is? He's preached to yous about being strong. About being able to take care of ourselves, but humbling ourselves enough to be a part of a team. To make smart decisions. He could have found some other people to be in his peerage way sooner than us. Why did he wait? Because. Hal looked down in disbelief at the hand that now covered his own. Naruto's eyes were opened and looked up to Hal's with kindness. Even though he had a mask on his face with a tube entering his mouth, Naruto smiled as his bishop, even though it looked strained. I had to take care of you. Shock and a little bit of fear was evident on Hal's face as he snatched his hand away from Naruto. You're awake. Naruto slightly giggled to himself, but it didn't sound as happy as it would while in his orb form. Kuroka ran to the other side of his bed to make sure he was okay. Naruto. You're finally awake. Tears started to form as she smiled at her, king, with all the love she could muster. You think I'm weak? Naruto coughed out. Hal growled and took a step back from Naruto's bed. I do. I think you put yourself in this predicament. I don't feel bad for you one bit. He yelled. Naruto started to laugh, but he couldn't continue as he coughed again. Kuroka looked at him in worry, but he didn't pay attention to her. All his attention was on Hal. True, I put myself in this predicament, but for good reason. He wheezed out, but my bishop thinks I'm weak, ehehe. What a joke. Excuse me? Hal said with a glare at his king. Naruto continued to weakly laugh like he didn't have a care in the world. Come back in 4 days. The room started to noticeably get colder and the pressure increased slightly. Naruto's magic was building up inside of him at a surprising rate, and I'll show you who's weak. The glare that Naruto was shooting at Hal made him shiver. Even the spirit of fire, a being of fire, lightly groaned at the feeling overcoming his partner. The coldness in those eyes was something neither of them was expecting. Even in his sickened state, Naruto's glare put fear in Hal's heart, but he hid his fear well with a glare of his own. Hal took a few steps back before disappearing in his own magic circle. When Hal left, the invisible pressure in the room disappeared. Naruto sighed as he tried to sit up, but Kuroka pushed him back down. His body was still very weak, so it didn't take a lot of force to overpower him. Naruto, you must stay still, you're still healing, Naya. Kuroka said in his ear quietly. His other peerage members surrounded the bed, making sure that their master was okay. He grinned at his queen. Well, if the doctor said I can't move, I'll stay still. He said with a grin that made Kuroka's heart pump faster. However, I have such a good feeling, welling up inside of my chest. This is the first time I get to see you all, with my own eyes. We're just glad you're okay from that idiot. Orochimaru said with his own rare, serene smile. Will make sure that you are well guarded until you're fully healed, Naruto-sama. Thanks, but it won't be needed. I'm okay with Kuroka staying here with me. She can handle the job, isn't that right, my protege? Naruto ended with a gasp. He still felt weak, but he was happy that he could finally talk to his family members in person. Naya, I'll take care of you, Naruto. Just go back to sleep. A magic seal appeared over Kuroka's hand, and she held it over Naruto's face. Purple stardust that glittered from the sunlight entering the room from the window fell from the seal and on Naruto's face. He took in a deep breath, inhaling some of the dust, before slowly fall back to sleep. Sleeping powder, I assume. Anna said. Kuroka nodded and placed Naruto's head on her breast. Yes. It won't harm him. He needs to rest. She said quietly. You all can leave if you want. I can handle things from here. If that is your wish. Orochimaru muttered as he slowly made his way out of the room, followed by Anna and Kisame. Damn, who knew that Hal was so fucked up? Were Kisame's final words as he closed the door behind him. Occult Research Club. Rias was by herself in the building. She was meditating on her situation with her pawn, Issei. I honestly don't know what to do. She thought to herself in worry. Everything I try, I mess up. I don't have any ideas, and he won't even give me his time of day. Ria sighed as she ran her hands through her hair in stress. Damn it, I need help with this. If only dash. Ria-tan. Rias groaned as she heard the familiar voice of her brother. Why are you here? Appearing suddenly out of nowhere, Cersex launched himself at his sister, hugging her tightly. Rias blushed in embarrassment as she tried to push Cersex off. Big brother. Get off of me. Oh, I haven't seen my little, itty-bitty, sister in so long. How have you been? You look well. Did you brush your teeth? It took a while, but Cersex finally calmed down after a few more minutes of agony. He sat down in one of the couches and smiled at his younger sister. You do look well, but I'm feeling the sense that you're troubled in some way. Can I help somehow? Ria sighed and contemplated her decision on speaking with her brother. Even though I've already asked for ideas from Yuto, I guess I'd be good if to ask for help from another man. She internally decided that talking to her brother would be the right move after all. I do have a problem, and I guess I could use some advice. But I don't want you to take this like it's a game. I want you to be fully cooperative and serious. She said with a pout. Anything for my little sister. He said with a smile. Ria smiled slightly at his statement, but quickly went back to her businesslike attitude. My pawn, Issei Hayadu. Do you know of him? She asked. Yeah, I actually do. We met a few days ago. He answered, surprising the younger Gremory. Why you did? Why didn't he say anything? Cersex frowned as he thought back to the night of Naruto's revival. He felt as if it wasn't his right to reveal what they were up to, so he quickly came up with a lie. I don't know why, but we were watching TV. He didn't like lying to his little sister, but it wasn't his place to tell her everything going on. Where were you at and why didn't you tell me you were in town? She asked with a frown. Well, you might as well know this now, the queen of that peerage is Kuroka the Nikomata, Kaniko's older sister. Ria's eyes widened in shock. There was another deal with your marriage with Riser. If they were to break your contract with Riser through rating game, I'd disable Kuroka's statues as an SS-class stray devil. But why? Shouted Rias in confusion and anger. She knew what that woman did, and it was disgusting. Why would you free her of her status as a stray devil? It's hard to explain, but know that she's innocent, and I was told that through a reliable source. He answered plainly. But what if they were lying? What if? They weren't lying. He said with all seriousness. Rias didn't like the answer, however. Oni-sama, you have to understand. I understand quite enough, Rias. He said sternly, shutting her up. It's just things that you don't understand yet. You'll learn soon enough. I guess, but what were you doing over there anyway? She quickly wanted to continue with the subject at hand. A serious Cersex was a scary Cersex, after all. Me and Orochimaru are friends. He said with a shoulder shrug. We meet up at his house and Issei was there at the time. Oh, that makes sense. Rias muttered sadly, causing Cersex to raise an eyebrow. Is something the matter? He asked his sister, in which she went into full detail of everything happening with her and her pawn. Cersex listened quietly, making sure to fully understand the situation his little sister was in before giving her his answer. So that's basically it. She finished with a sigh. Truly, she has never been more stressed out over something. Well, other than her arranged marriage, but that's over now. Seems like you have a real problem at hand. Young Issei is finding out for himself how the world works, and he doesn't like it one bit. Said Cersex, rubbing his chin in thought. It is, and I've tried getting him to understand that I'm not like that, but he won't listen. She said sadly. I've ran out of ideas, and I don't know what to do. Cersex sighed in stress. I've got a boatload of problems of my own, and it's similar to your problem, Rias. She raised an eyebrow at her brother in interest. How so? There's been a growing distrust of high-class devils from the lower classes. He explained my stunt to save the young phoenix wasn't taken so well. People are starting to see things in a different way. And while I don't support this growing movement, I can't say that I feel guilty for how it is. You're a good-hearted person, Oni-sama. Rias said confidently. They'll understand that it won't be a big problem for long. No, Rias, no, it will be a problem that may last for a while. Just the other day, one of my butlers tried to assassinate me. The younger Gremory couldn't even form words as her mouth was slightly ajar in shock. Someone tried him? One of his own servants wanted to kill the leader of the underworld? Things are changing. I should have done something else with the Ravel Phoenix. Maybe I should have left her alone, even if it came with the cost of losing the support of the Phoenix clan. And before you yell in disagreement, know that what I did could start another civil war. I hope that it doesn't, but it may start another if things continue with how it is. While the Gremory are nice to their servants, there are clans that treat their servants however they want. The lower classes are sick of the favoritism that we high-class devils have and want things to change. That's a lot to process. I didn't know things were getting that bad. She muttered quietly. They are, but I'll handle it the right way. I want to avoid war. Low-class devils make the majority of our species, so it wouldn't make sense not to listen to their demands. I'll make sure everything will go as smooth as possible. He said with a smile. And that's what makes you a great leader, Oni-sama. Rias said with a genuine smile. Thanks for that, Riatan, but you have your own problem that needs handling, right? She nodded in agreement. Well then, I think I have a solution. Which is? She said with childlike curiosity, leaning towards her brother in excitement. Fight him. Rias slapped her forehead and groaned. Fight him? Do you honestly think that will work? I don't see anything else you've come up work yet. Rias growled at Cersex shot which was filled with truth. Listen, I know more about boys than you do. There isn't nothing like a good old tussle when things turn sour. I know, but why would that work? She asked. Whenever Ajuka and I would disagree during our younger days, we would fight it out. While it wasn't the safest things to do, fighting helped us understand one another. That same thing could happen with you and Issei. He said with a shrug. Really? I'm not too excited at the idea of fighting my own servant. She said, displeased with Cersex's answer to her problem. I promise you, sometimes you need to use your fist to solve your problems. It's the best way for you to understand him, and for him to understand you. You have to do something different if you want to show him you're serious of gaining his trust, Riatan. It's just how things work. If you say so. She said with a sigh. Seriously, I will never understand boys. You never will either. He said with a laugh. I have to go now, but I hope you find success with your pawn. I'd hate it if you two didn't get along, which would cause him to rebel against you, which would then make him into a stray devil, which would make me put a bounty on his head. Why yeah. Rias said with uncertainty. Well, I guess this is goodbye. Yup. Make sure to keep doing well in school. You are the heiress of the Gremory clan after all. He said with a wave as he disappeared. Rias frowned once her brother was gone. While it was always good to see her brother, his idea did put her on edge. Fight him? That doesn't sound logical. I'm sure something will pop up soon. Rias straightened her desk for the night before teleporting herself to the Hayada residence for the night. Hayada residence. Rias sat down on the couch with Asia, who was watching some cartoon. They all, excluding Issei, had dinner not too long ago, and the elder Hayadus retired to their room for the night. Issei hadn't returned home yet, so his dinner was in the fridge, waiting for him. How was your day, Bucho? Asked Asia politely. It went well. She said with a smile. Nothing was a burden, however, I'm still trying to find a way to prove myself to Issei. He told me about the fight you two had. She mumbled. I don't like that you two aren't getting along. It's very hard seeing two friends fight. I know, Asia, but it's just something I have to deal with. A lot of the things I've done these past few weeks have been unfair, and I'm just now learning that. I guess I'm not fit out to be king. And no. Bucho is a great king. You just have a lot to learn. I couldn't have the job you had, Bucho. But you take all the stress with pride, and I really admire that about you. Asia squeaked out. Rias smiled at the younger girl. Thank you for that, Asia. I really appreciate you being here with me at this time. No problem, Bucho. She answered back with a smile of her own. I just hope. The front door suddenly opened, cutting the conversation between King and Bishop. Issei entered the house drenched in sweat, probably from his training session with Lee. Both Rias and Asia stood up and greeted Issei happily. He waved at the two, but he was too tired to say anything as he headed upstairs. Where are you going, Issei? Asia asked cutely. Shower. He said simply as he continued his walk. He seemed to almost struggle going up the stairs to the bathroom from the fatigue he was feeling. The two watched him march up the stairs with worry until he was gone from sight. He's really trying hard to get stronger. Asia said. He is, but I don't want him to run himself to the ground. Too much training could be bad for his health. Rias said. Yes, but I think he needs this, said Asia as she sat back down. Rias followed her, Bishop, to the couch and sat with her. Why do you say that? Rias asked with curiosity. I watched the fight that the other peerage had for us along with the battle that the guy who wears that green jumpsuit. Issei seemed a little scared when we watched it over and over together. I guess he was putting himself in their situation and judging what he could do. And his results? Rias asked, but she knew the answer. He wouldn't survive. I'm sure that's what he was thinking. That's why, even though he's immersing himself into his training, I'm glad that he is doing this for himself. He has a drive, and if he's happy, then I'm happy for him. It's what makes Issei Issei. The blonde concluded. It's what makes Issei Issei. Rias rubbed her chin and thought, what do you think I do to represent myself, Asia? You, Bucho? She asked with confusion. Well, you run the occult research club. You are a top student at Kuo, and you have people adoring you everywhere you go. I know that, Rias said with a hair flip, but forget about my image. What do you think my goals are? What drives me to do the things I do? What makes Rias Gremory, just Rias? Asia was silent, contemplating on her answer, before saying her thoughts out loud. I don't know. Rias stared at Asia with no expression on her face. Asia looked at her friend in worry, thinking that she said something wrong. She didn't know of Rias' goals or anything, but that didn't mean that she didn't like Rias Gremory as a person. I mean, that I isn't a bad thing. Many people haven't found themselves, even in old age. I get that. Rias sighed and sat back into the couch. It's just that I've grown up to believe that I'm so special. That I'm this and that. I've had everything I wanted handed to me on a silver platter, but did that come at the cost of not even developing myself as a person? Of course, I'll grow with age, but that's just my mentality and my body. But me, as just Rias. I don't even know if I have an identity. Well, have you ever done something to find yourself? Asia asked, genuinely concerned. Have you let anyone else know about your identity issue? I haven't. Well, maybe Akino, but I haven't fully expressed myself to anyone, ever. Well, maybe you should one day whenever you're ready to do so, said Asia as she stood up. I'm sleepy now. I have a test tomorrow that I must be rest for so I can perform well. Good night, Asia said with a happy smile and a wave. Good night, Asia. Rias said with a kind-hearted smile. I think I'll stay up for a little while longer before going to sleep. Thanks for this conversation. I needed it. Asia nodded at her, King, before headed upstairs for bed. Rias sat there for a while, contemplating on her conversations with both Asia and Cersex. She wasn't going to fight Issei, that's for certain, but what other option did she have? He wouldn't talk to her, he wouldn't even look in her direction. She sat on the couch for a while, not even noticing time flying by. When it was almost midnight, Rias was finally aware of the time and quickly headed to bed. However, she usually slept with Issei and Asia in Issei's room, so she wasn't looking forward to the awkwardness awaiting her. Entering and closing the door behind her, it was dark in the room and she could hear Asia's snoozing. She was hugging onto Issei's left arm and using as a pillow. She smiled at the cute scene and walked over to the right side of the bed. She stripped from all of her clothing, revealing her amazing figure, but her peerage members were too deep in their sleep to notice. She slid into bed and pulled the covers over her, sighing in content at the softness that rubbed against her nude body. Rias bit the bottom of her lip when she saw Issei's other arm on his side. Asia, surprisingly, didn't try to hog it like how she would try to. Should I? She thought to herself. While the bed felt good, the heat that Issei would radiate would always feel amazing. But she didn't want to intrude. They were on bad terms anyway. Well, we are sleeping in the same bed, and he is asleep. Maybe he won't notice? She said with a small blush as she scooted next to Issei and grabbed his arm. What are you doing? Issei's voice surprised the Gremory. She flinched at his voice, but couldn't see his face since he was cuddled up with Asia. I just wanted to, you know. Rias' blush continued to grow along with her embarrassment at being caught. Issei turned his head enough to see Rias' red face, but he didn't react to it. You know, before all of this mess between us happened, I would have loved to be in this same position. Rias' blush started to fade away as the pressure of the room started to increase. I know that. She muttered. Then you understand why I don't want to be close to you. You being in the same bed with me are already pushing my limits. Listen, Issei, I understand that you're mad at me and I'm sorry for the argument we had a few days ago. I've been jealous of the attention you've been giving them. The Gremory admitted. You mean Lead Yo and Orochimaru? He asked. All of them. You tend to get along with them so well. I look at that peerage and compare them to my own. While they are stronger than us, for sure, I don't see much of a difference. Both peerages see all the members as family. She explained. No, they don't consider each other as family members. Rias raised an eyebrow in curiosity. Issei continued that peerage was first formed a few weeks ago. They all met each other at the same time, excluding Orochimaru, who said he met everyone other than their queen. They're not a family yet because they hardly know each other, but they're taking the time to do so, and they're doing it the right way. I see you, Kiba, Akino, Kaneko, and Asia smile, and talk with each other after school in the clubhouse. You all have a connection, but I don't feel that when I'm with you. I feel that sense of friendship when I'm hanging out with Lee and Yo. When I fight against Anna and Kisame for the TV remote, I feel happy. Even when I mediate with Orochimaru and Hao, they're nice to me. And now that their queen is back, I can already tell that she's an amazing person. I just fit in more with them. He finished. But if Asia can accept us, why can't you? Rias grabbed his arm and held it to her chest. I want you to see us in the same light. I don't want you thinking that we're against you. I know a lot of my past mistakes with you have been selfish, but I'm willing to start over now. I truly want you to see us as your family. I'm sorry, Bucho, but I don't know if that is possible. Rias' eyes widened with hurt. Tears started to form around the edges of her eyes. I see you all laughing and smiling, enjoying each other's company. And Yuma's face just pops up all the time in my head. I'm haunted by it. Whenever I'm around you, her image appears in my mind, and it stops me from getting closer to you. She's a reminder. I'm sorry, Issei, but I feel like they're trying to steal you away from me. She whispered. Her body was shaking while she tried to hold back tears. I try to understand you, but don't give me the opportunity to do so. Issei stared at Ria's face for a while. Her teal blue eyes were filled with tears and she was gripping his arm like it was her lifeline. Her body was lightly shaking, and he could tell that she was trying to stop herself before becoming an emotional wreck. Another girl appeared over Ria's shaking body. Issei's breath hitched as Yuma appeared smiling down at him. Her eyes were the same, along with her hair, skin tone. Issei swore he could smell the scent of apples, the same scent that he burnt into memory while on his date with her. "Are you going to join the girl that had a part of my doom?" Yuma's mouth didn't move, but Issei heard her voice clear as day. "No," he said out loud. Rias didn't know that Issei was seeing things and couldn't hold back the tears. She muffled her mouth with her hand as she cried, not even knowing of Issei's own internal struggles. Yuma's face suddenly turned viscous, mirroring the smile of Rainier. Yuma's smile, hair, and overall attitude changed into the fallen angel that killed him to what seemed like months ago. "She'll just do you like how I did." Yuma turned. Rayar laughed evilly. "Just watch. She's the heiress of the Gremory. You think she has time to really appreciate you? Everything coming out of her mouth is lies." "Lies?" Issei rolled over, back to his position he was in with Asia before Rias entered the room. While Rias was silently sobbing, Issei had his own tears running down his cheeks. He pulled his arm out of Rias' grasp and used it to wrap around Asia. He gritted his teeth and forced his eyes shut, but the echoes of Rainier's laughter reverberated in his mind. A crying Gremory. A crying servant. Asia unconsciously smiled and cuddled up to the extra warmth that hugged her body. The orange orb disappeared. The next morning. 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45. "Are you all right, partner?" A green light flashed from Issei's right hand as Drake spoke out loud. "Perfect, 46, 47, 48. I listened to the conversation you had with the Gremory last night. While I understand that you are feeling a world of hurt, it isn't all her fault. I say you put this behind you." 49, 50. Issei looked at the bar and another shot of Yuma's face flashed in his mind. 51, 52, 53. "Are you ignoring me, partner?" Drake asked with a little edge in his voice. "I'm not ignoring you," Issei said, keeping a mental count of his reps in his head. "I just don't want to talk about her." "Then when are you going to recognize your problem that you've had?" "I've held on to your secret, but this problem isn't something that I can help you with. You need outside help. You're haunted by that girl and the fallen angel, and you're holding all of it in. It's not healthy at all." "I know, Drake, but I don't want to tell anyone yet. I don't want to be a burden anymore," Issei answered. "All right, but when I believe this problem of yours is too much for you to handle, I'll step in," the dragon finished as he went back into his slumber. "Thanks," said Issei as he continued to lift his weights. He thought back to the day Rias had helped him with his reps that day. He could barely get to 40, but he had somehow got past that. He made it to 50 with her help, but he needed to be stronger, so that he didn't have to depend on anyone, because the time where he has to defend himself and anyone around him would come back around. He had to be ready. Issei racked up the bar and sighed in content. He stood up from his bench and started to walk out the basement. He grinned when he flexed, flashing his muscles at the mirror in the room. 70 reps with 200 pounds? I'm getting better, he said to himself with a genuine smile as he turned the lights off and closed the door behind him. After taking a quick shower, he put on his uniform and headed downstairs to see his parents and Asia finishing up breakfast. "Mornin'. Issei said with a wave. "Hello, dear," Mrs. Hayata said with a smile. "I have your food ready for you. I saw your plate from last night was still in the fridge. Did you not like it?" "No, I just wasn't hungry last night, but now I am," he said as he devoured the eggs his mother made. She smiled at her son while Asia giggled at how he ate his food. Something seemed the matter with Rias today. Mr. Hayata said after he took a sip of his coffee. "Do you know any reason why?" "No, I don't." Issei internally cursed at himself. He was lying way too easily now. I've been around Orochimaru too much lately. I'm picking up his antics. Did she already leave? Yeah, she left not too long ago. Asia said with a frown. She really did seem upset. Issei hummed in thought, thinking back to their conversation last night. He didn't regret what he said, but he didn't like it either. He shrugged his shoulders and went back to eating his breakfast. She's Rias Gremory, after all. Nothing will bother her for too long. She'll find a way. Later that day, students stepped out of the Gremory's way as she strutted down the hallways. It was unusual to see her frowning, but today was the first time the students of Kuo Academy actually saw Rias Gremory angry. For what reason, nobody knew, but the atmosphere around her screamed at everyone to take a few steps back. As for Rias herself, her expression on the outside matched her thoughts on the inside. She was angry. Really angry. The conversation between Issei and her last night made her cry for sure. But now it made her angry. She had tried so many things. So many opportunities she's given her, pawn, and he just brushed her aside when she was at her weakest. Sure, her thoughts were very selfish, but she deserved to be angry right now, right? Akino followed her friend down the hall with a worried look. The last time Rias looked this mad, it was when she was told that she was in an arranged marriage. It was a rare sight indeed, and Akino felt sorry for whatever got her friend this mad, for they won't be around to talk about it for long. The two entered Orochimaru's room silently and made their way to their seats. Rias sat down and crossed her hands together. She looked at the clock in the room. They had 3 more minutes until class started. Orochimaru wasn't in the room yet, but a few students were. She started to tap her foot on the ground with impatience. It was like everything was trying to piss her off today. Even time wouldn't speed up to sate her anger. This was. Rias felt a hand on her shoulder, and she jerked her head to the owner. Akino's worried face stopped her from striking out and calmed her down a little. What's wrong? Please don't tell me nothing, because everyone in school can feel something is wrong. You know you can tell me anything and it'll stay in between us. Rias smiled and nodded at her friend, telling her every little detail of what happened last night. Akino listened to Rias' story, internalizing it fully to understand her situation with her pawn. Now that he did that, I don't even feel sad anymore. I feel angry at him. I've tried and tried and tried and nothing works. So you're giving up on him? Akino asked with a frown. I don't know. Good evening, class. Orochimaru entered the room at the same time the bell rang, glad to see everyone safe and sound. Rias raised an eyebrow at Orochimaru. He didn't have the same attitude that he had yesterday. He almost seemed happier than how he usually was. Do you feel better from yesterday, Mr. Suki? Asked one of his students. Very much so. He said with a smile that made some of the girls swoon at him with hearts in their eyes. Something happened to me yesterday, and it boosted my spirits quite a bit. What was it, if you don't mind us asking? A male student asked. Orochimaru's grin grew even bigger. If that was even possible, a friend of mine returned. For a while, she didn't understand what he meant, but then it clicked. Rias' eyes met Orochimaru's own, and the two entered their usual staring contest of wits. Orochimaru's grin just confirmed it for her. While she didn't know the underlying meaning of what Orochimaru said. Here's another lesson that doesn't have anything to do with chemistry, class. Orochimaru walked to his board and wrote risk in its kanji form. Sometimes in life, you must do what others believe is unordinary in order to discover something new. Many chemists of the past were considered crazy for their ideas, but were later praised as geniuses for their findings later on in their career. You have to take risk in life that will make you stand out from others, or to accomplish your goals. She took a deep breath. You're talking to me, aren't you? She whispered, but she knew Orochimaru heard her with his keen hearing. I sure am. He answered without looking at her. He was more focused on pulling out his lesson book for the day. Some of the students looked at him in confusion, not picking up on the secret conversation their teacher and classmate were having. Rias stood from her seat, catching everyone's attention. "Mr. Suki, may Akino and I please be dismissed? We have important club business that needs urgent attention." "Knock yourself out," he said nonchalantly. Rias rolled her eyes at Orochimaru before picking up her bags and leaving the room. Akino had to take in what was happening for a few seconds before picking up her things and following her best friend out the door. Sona and Tsubaki looked on in interest, but didn't do anything to stop them. "Bucho, what are we doing?" asked Akino as they walked down the halls. "Akino, go pick up Issei from his class. Tell their teacher that it's important." It was all Rias gave her, Queen, before disappearing in a magic seal. Her mind was made up. Occult Research Club. Akino, do you know what's going on?" Issei asked with his hands behind his head. The two were inside the ORC and headed to the main room where Rias was waiting for them. "I honestly don't know what Bucho is doing either," said Akino as she opened the door for the both of them. Inside of the room was Rias, sitting at her desk with her hands laced together. Issei raised an eyebrow at her, but made his way to in front of her desk. Akino looked on from the sidelines, wondering where Rias was taking things. "Hello, Issei," Rias said in a businesslike manner. Issei gave her a quick wave before speaking his own thoughts. "Bucho, why am I here?" he asked plainly. "I'm going to be honest with you, Issei. I've done almost everything I can think of to convince you that you belong in this group with us. Our conversation we had last night crushed me, but this morning I woke up angry at you, along with myself." "You were angry with me and yourself?" he asked, highly confused on what was going on. "Yes. I was angry at my own incompetence," she shot her pawn, a deadly glare that made him flinch, "but I was angrier at you for dismissing my family like we mean nothing to you." "And no, that isn't what I meant," he said in worry. "I just feel like this peerage was forced upon me and I hate that. I didn't have any say-so about my own life. I'm tired of explaining this to you. And I've accepted that, but you clearly haven't," she said, not even affected at his outburst. She was through feeling like she had to please him any longer. "And I don't think I will. You stole my life from me," he said with a pointed index finger at the Gremory. "You didn't ask me if I wanted to be revived. You waited until I died. Who in the fuck would do something so sick?" "You would," she shouted and slammed her hand on her desk for adding effect. Issei took a step back from Rias, generally surprised at her new outburst. What are you talking about?" he said with a little hesitation. "Please forgive me if I'm wrong, but weren't you crying to me asking if I could revive Asia when she was dead?" Issei's eyes widened in both fear and shock as he thought back to that day she was dead and on her way to heaven. "I admit that I didn't want to revive her while she didn't have her sacred gear. However, you wanted her back for your own selfish desires. I wanted her power, but I also revived Asia so you can trust me. You knew what you were doing, and you ignored the consequences. Asia can no longer go to heaven now, true, but the decision of her being a devil isn't fully my fault." A scowl grew on Issei's face as he glared at Rias. "What's the point of this fucking conversation anyway? What's the real reason why you called me here? I want you to understand that under pressure, you would make the same selfish decisions that I would," she said as she walked in front of Issei with her arms crossed over her bountiful breast. "I'm forcing you to see that your decision to save Asia was similar to my own. Did you ask her if she wanted to become a devil? Do you know why she still keeps her Bible under the bed, even though she knows that she can't pray to God anymore? Did you factor what could happen to her when she died, or did you want her back, because you believed that it wasn't her time to go yet?" Issei was quiet, gritting his teeth in anger because he couldn't answer back. She was right. She was right about everything. Asia was in the same position that he was, but he helped in decision of turning Asia into a devil. He never thought of it that way, but now that Rias presented the evidence in front of him, he felt like the world's biggest hypocrite. He looked down in shame, but Rias wasn't finished. Now you understand what I did. I needed you to help combat my arranged marriage, and I felt like what I did was right at the time. I see the error in my ways now, but I will no longer let you continue to act like I'm some evil demon. Issei wanted to say something but Rias beat him to it. And since you don't like my peerage so much, I'll give you the opportunity to leave it now. What? He looked up at his king, shock and confusion evident on his face. What could she mean by that? You like that other peerage so much, huh? Well, I'm here to propose a deal with you. Issei Hayadu, defeat me and I'll request a trade with the king of Orochimaru. You can be a part of their peerage and I'll get the equivalent amount of pieces I spent on you. However, if you lose, you shall continue to be a part of this peerage and actually try to get to know everyone. You can't be serious. He muttered. He had really made her angry if she was pulling off something like this. Rias, this is too much. You proved your point. Shouted Akino from the sidelines. Rias ignored Akino and gave Issei her final remarks. You want to be a harem king? Or you want to protect those you love, right? Whatever your fucking dream is, you have a better chance at accomplishing that with them. They are stronger than us, something you keep reminding me of every other damn day. So I'm giving you the opportunity to leave and be with who you want to be with. I've prepared a barrier on the outside of town so we can battle it out until our heart's desires. You shall come at me with the intent to kill since you are fighting for your freedom, right? She mocked. Bucho. Issei looked at Rias in disbelief. Akino will take you there. A magic circle appeared under Rias. If you're a man, you'd come. And she disappeared. Akino couldn't believe what she saw. He had never seen Rias that angry before. Well, what do you want to do? She asked. I didn't want it to be like this. Issei mumbled as he sat down and ran his hands through his hair. This is crazy. Crazy, yes, but she feels like you back her into a corner. Said Akino as she walked up to the younger devil. You haven't given her many opportunities, Issei. While I do feel like this is a bit much, I understand why she's doing this. What do you think I should do then? He asked her. Well, I am a little biased, so I'd say go fight her and lose, fufufo. He said with a laugh. Issei smiled too, but confusion was easily recognizable on his face. But, being honest with you, whatever you choose, I'll support. Even if you fight so you can be traded, it's your decision. I just want to let you know that I've enjoyed your time here with us, and I hope you'll stay, regardless of what happens out there with Rias. Thanks for that, Akino. It means more than you know. He said as he stood up with a sigh. So what are you going to do? She asked. Even though I don't like this, she did challenge my manhood with her last statement. Sorry if I hit your best friend a couple times, Akino, but I gotta do it. He said with a smirk. Just don't do anything too crazy. She said as she summoned a magic circle and disappeared with Issei. Outskirts of Kuo. Akino and Issei appeared in the middle of a cleared-out field. They were on the opposite side of the barrier that Rias set up. Rias herself was on the other side with her arms crossed, waiting on the two. She glared at Issei when their eyes met. So, you decided to fight for your freedom? She said with a little anger in her tone. Yes, Bucho, I'll fight you, but I'll decide on what I want to do with myself during this fight. He said confidently as he marched towards the middle of the field. Rias laughed mockingly. It must be nice being able to decide what you want. What? Asked Issei in confusion. Never mind it. She said with a growl. You came here for one thing and that's it. Conversation isn't necessary at this point. The only thing that matters now is the fight. Are you sure you want to do this, Bucho? I think you need to calm down and think about this more. I've already thought enough. Rias' body was surrounded by a red veil of power. It's time to show you that I'm not everything you think I am. I can make decisions for myself, I'll show you who I really am. Well, let's get to it then, shouted Issei as he summoned his boosted gear. No holding back. Rias Gremory, full-blooded high-class devil, king. Versus Issei Hayadu, low-class devil, pawn. Be careful, partner. We know what your king's power of destruction is capable of. We need to get in close and make this fight physical, shouted Drake. Right. Let's go, shouted Issei as he summoned his wings and flew towards Rias. Not so fast. Rias summoned multiple magical circles, and a shower of bolts of pod rained down on Issei. Use your swiftness. I know, shouted Issei to his dragon partner as he swirled in and out of the rain of bolts of destruction. He flew in the sky and continued to avoid the bolts while trying to find a blind spot on Rias. You're not the only one who can fly, Issei, shouted Rias as she summoned her own devil wings and flew up towards Issei while releasing a torrent of bolts in his direction. There! Issei mentally shouted as he nosedived to Rias. He was still dodging her attacks, but now that she was flying towards him, she was subtracting the distance between them. All he had to do was keep on dodging her attacks until he was close enough to fight her hand-to-hand. Shit! Rias muttered when Issei was getting closer to her. Her anger was clouding her judgment so early in the fight. She quickly switched from offense to defense and summoned another magic circle, only it was for blocking attacks. Issei was right in front of Rias now, and was going to use the power of gravity from his fall into his first attack. He reared his fist back as he neared towards Rias and her shield. Boost! His gauntlet shouted, and at the perfect time, an extra wave of energy filled Issei's being as he punched and broke through Rias' shield. Ah! She shouted. Issei's fist met her stomach. While the shield took the brunt of the punch, it still hurt her somewhat. She was falling back down on the ground, but she caught herself by flexing her wings outwards, stopping her descent. She was rather close to the ground, however. Something that Issei was going to exploit. Too slow! Issei shouted as he landed on the ground, quicker than what Rias had anticipated. He grabbed Rias' leg and tossed her towards one of the nearby trees. Rias quickly gathered herself, and made another defensive seal to block herself from the tree. She gritted her teeth in anger and flashed a glare at the grinning Issei. Too quick for ya, Ebucho? Maybe sitting at that desk for so long stopped you from doing what really matters, training. He shouted with a cocky smirk that reminded Rias of Orochimaru's own. I'll show you. I can handle myself. Rias concentrated her magic into many small orbs of destruction, and sent them flying at Issei. Boost! Boost! Another surge of power filled Issei's being as he flew over the small orbs. He smirked at Rias at her failed attack, but the smile on her face sent a wave of dread through his body. His instincts were screaming for him to move from his current position, and when he did, the same orbs of destruction flew around where he once was. They were back on the offensive and followed Issei around in the air. Guided missiles? Issei said as he moved left and right, dodging the orbs, but they kept following him. I've never seen something like this before, he mumbled. Look alive, Issei. His eyes widened when Rias entered his field of vision. She was right in front of him, in the air and sending a blast of pod his way. He was already moving too quick in her direction to dodge the incoming blast, so he crossed his arms over his chest and tanked the blast. Ah! He shouted as he was blasted back from the force of the attack. It was stronger than he expected, but it wasn't as strong as Lee's punches. Not by a long shot. I can keep moving, even if... The orbs that were following Issei exploded once they made contact with Issei's back. A large smoke screen filled the air, and Rias watched it all with a smirk as she floated back down to the ground. You underestimate me, Issei. I am a king, for a reason. I am a battle tactician by studying many raiding games for years. I know when to make up a good plan. she said confidently as she waited for the smoke to clear. Boost. 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 She heard from the smoke screen. Issei flew out of the smoke with a deadly rage in his eyes. She quickly reacted by send a large blast of her power at Issei. You want to fight seriously, huh? He shouted in rage. That last attack damaged his back a lot, and it stung to move. However, with his endurance training with Lee, he could keep on moving without focusing on the pain. Explosion! Shouted booster gear as a mixture of green and red energy surrounded Issei. Acting quickly to the approaching energy blast headed his way, he made a small ball of energy, and then punching it with all his might. Dragon shot! He shouted. Rias' eyes widened at the magnitude of Issei's blast. It easily overpowered her own attack, and the remaining energy was headed in her direction. She sent a beam of destruction at Issei's dragon shot and entered a beam struggle with it. The ground underneath her shifted from the pressure and her feet started to dig into it. Sweat poured from Ria's forehead as she continued to pour in magic to support her beam, but her arms started to buckle from the pressure that was exerted from it. To her surprise, Issei landed in front of her again, only this time, his palm was firmly planted on the ground and his right leg was outstretched. Is he going to? Leaf Hurricane. Issei copied one of his best friend's moves, but it lacked the wind magic behind it. Even if it did, Issei's base strength was enough to swipe at Ria's feet, and she lost her balance. If he's using that, then his next attack thinking quickly, and using her last battle against Lee as her source of information, Rias anticipated Issei, who ran towards her falling body intending to land a menacing punch to her midsection. Summoning a large portion of her remaining power, she outstretched her hand at Issei's gauntlet-enhanced arm with sent a powerful bolt of her power of destruction at him. The two entered a struggle of power as Issei's boosted gear was blocking the bolt of death. The force of the struggle pushed Rias back onto the ground, but she kept focusing on her power into her magic outage. Growling. Rias growled as she tried to keep the pressure on her side of things, but she wasn't in a favorable position. Her being on her back was uncomfortable and rocks were starting to dig into her skin as the pressure of their struggle continued to climb. She flinched as she noticed that Issei was inching closer and closer to her. It was like he was even affected by the power struggle as his only goal was to knock the living shit out of her. Boost. Rias' eyes widened when she heard Issei's power double again. Issei's hand was now totally passing through her magic easily, and was quickly gaining ground on her. Thinking quickly, Rias pushed off on the ground with her other hand and rolled over, instantly summoning her wings, and flew away from her pawn. She's running. Issei said with a frown. This shit is stupid. I don't see the purpose of dash. Issei took another step on the ground and red magic circle appeared out of nowhere, catching him off guard. He wasn't quick enough to move out of the way as lightning coursed through his body, causing him to shout in pain. Rias smirked a little, glad she planted the small mine down when she flipped over, but her focused glare grew back on her face once she saw Issei fly into the air with her. While he was the one taking the most damage out of the two, her magic reserves were getting close to its end. The next shot was going to have to do it for her. You seemed pretty banged up, she said with crossed arms. His shirt was basically destroyed, only hanging on by a few threads, and his pants had a few holes in them. While you do have raw strength on your side, you're not planning your attacks at all. I guess they didn't teach you that, huh? Shut up. Issei said with a growl. I've learned a lot with them, and I'm not going to let you disrespect them. Lead yo, Orochimaru, they are all good people. I don't care if they're good people, I care that you like them more than you like us. She said with a frown. Fuck all of this talking. Issei flashed Rias his boosted gear that Khan shouted boost. And multiplied Issei's power. If I want to win, I'm going to have to take a different approach. But, whatever happens, I've gained a respect for you. Rias. What? She said with shock. He didn't say the usual bucho like how everyone else would. It was like when he said her name when they were arguing, only this time, he didn't hold disdain with her name. This was a bold move you did. I can't say that I was expecting to fight my king today, but I'm enjoying this, even if my back hurts like hell. Rias giggled to herself when an image of her brother flashed in her mind. Boys. I guess he was right. But you did challenge my manhood, so I can't look at you as my bucho for now. As of now, you're an enemy after my head. If that's what you want. She said with a smile. The cocky grin that grew on Issei's face unnerved Rias a little. Alright Drake, let's get it going. Right. Shouted the dragon in agreement. Boost. 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 Green energy exploded from Issei as he flew towards Rias in shocking speeds. She hardly had enough time to block his punch, which was followed by a barrage of blows to her body. She gritted her teeth at the bone-shatter strength he had, and her magic shield broke many times over. She kept repairing it the instant it was broken, but it was running her reserves out. This needs to stop. She mentally shouted to herself as she flew away, but Issei was right behind her with a dangerous glint in her eyes. She gritted her teeth as she tried to come up with a plan. If I can just hit his back. He sustained a lot of damage from my orbs back there, but I need a good vantage point to get a clear shot. Rias noticed the forestry up ahead and took a nosedive into it. Rias entered the trees, ignoring all the leaves brushing her face, and landed on the ground. She quickly hid amongst the trees when she heard Issei land on the ground as well. She calmed her breathing as she watched him from her hiding spot, which was on a branch that was covered by the leaves from other trees. Rias watched him look around the area to find where she was. I can't tell where she's at. He muttered quietly to his partner. Any ideas? I'd say that she took to the trees. You have the advantage when it comes to fighting on the ground, and I believe she knows this. She probably took a high-up hiding spot to have a good look at the area, as well as being close to the sky as an escape route. Explained Drake. Alright, makes sense. She's keeping quiet, so I should listen for anything weird. He said as he started to walk around quietly. While the forest was already filled with sounds, he was looking for anything distinctive that could help locate Rias. TCH, I don't hear shit. He whispered to himself as he checked his surroundings, making sure to keep special attention to the trees above. Rias was watching Issei closely, but he wasn't giving her any type of openings. I need a distraction, she said, planning what she would hope to be her last attack. Issei's head twitched when he heard a sound, but sighed when he noticed that it was only a bird. Damn it, my nerves are really high right now. Just calm down, partner. Even if you are nervous, keep up the appearance that you're still in control. Anything helps in these types of situations. Drake said. Right. He said as he kept his awareness up. It was quiet for a while, but the sound of lightning gained Issei's attention. He ran over to where he heard the lightning to see a tree burnt to a crisp, but Rias wasn't around. What happened here? Said Issei as he looked at the tree in confusion. A couple of trees behind him, Rias smirked as she outstretched her arm towards Issei's back. She had summoned her familiar to place and activate a spell trap on one of the trees, so that she could get a clean look at his back. It worked perfected as Issei was still trying to figure out what was going on. Checkmate. She whispered and blasted the remaining magic she had into a large ball of destruction at Issei's exposed back. The ball flew towards Issei at quick speeds, and he didn't even notice it until the last second. Partner. Behind you. Nanny? The ball of destruction exploded on contact. Issei's howls of pain were enough for Rias to confirm that she landed a clean hit on him. She dropped to the ground, taking a few deep breaths as she watched the explosion fade, and was replaced with a large smoke screen. Her eyes widened when she saw that he was still standing, but heavily damaged as well. Gah. This shit hurts. He yelled as he slowly made his way out of his crater. I swear I've got a dragon shot with Rias' name on. No! Shouted Rias. She wouldn't be able to handle anything else after his last move. She had no more energy spare, so she was going to have to do something desperate. She surprised herself when she flew at Issei with a clenched fist. She wasn't one for hand-to-hand combat, but she had to if she wanted to win. Damn it! Issei muttered when he saw her coming his way. He couldn't move fast enough because of the damage he suffered from the last attack, so all he could was suffer Rias' last punishment. With all the strength she had, she reared her hand back and directly punched Issei on his cheek. She heard a bone in her hand snap and she yelped in pain, but the sound of Issei's body falling on the ground indefinitely was better. She landed harshly on the ground, not being able to sustain her weight any longer. Rias gasped and held her right hand with care. Her index finger was broken from her punch, and it didn't feel good at all. Fuck. Fuck. Rias' eyes widened when she heard her pawn's voice. He was still conscious? You can still move? She said with awe and worry. If he could still move, there wasn't anything she could do if he wanted to walk over to her and chop her on the back of the neck, ending the fight in his favor. No. I can't. Issei said with a groan. Seriously though? That punch was a little extra. Issei spit up a glob of blood that hurt. I didn't think you can punch that hard. Rias gave a stained laugh. I can't. I just backed the force of my flight into the punch. To sum it up, I was actually falling, I just made sure that my fist is what landed on you. Hee hee, you sure made me feel stupid today. How did you do the lightning thing? He asked. I summoned my familiar to activate a magic trap, similar to one I used earlier. She explained. What? You had help. That's cheating. He yelled childishly with an accusing finger pointed at Rias. She laughed wholeheartedly. I didn't cheat, Issei, I used all of my options to beat you. I can't have my pawn beat me. Who do you think I am? She said with a laugh. Suyuri, said Issei with a roll of his eyes, but he couldn't stop the smiling growing on his face. Rias saw his smile, and she grew one as well. So, I guess I lost. Damn it, now I don't have any manhood. You have manhood, Issei. It's just that the proud woman that I am wouldn't let you one-up me. Just to end on a good note, I knew that you would be a challenge, but I didn't think that the victor would be decided at the very end. You did surprisingly well. Thanks, Rias. She beamed at him in happiness. It just felt right to hear her name from his mouth, but to be honest with you, I wasn't going to leave in the first place. You weren't? She asked with a surprised look. Nope, because I didn't even know devils could trade pieces between one another. He said with a shoulder shrug. He winced when he felt pain surge through his arm. Ugh, hi. I need to sleep. Both looked up when they heard wings flapping. Akino landed in between them, and looked at them with smile. You two really did a number on yourselves, fufufu. She laughed. So who won? I did, of course. Rias said proudly. What did you expect? I was expecting you to lose. The three turned their head to see Yo leaning on a tree with an orange orb sitting on his shoulder. I won't deny it would have been fun if Issei could have joined the group. I don't want him there, said Anna, perched up in a tree branch. He's annoying. Yo! Shouted Issei in happiness. What's going on, bro? What are doing here? Your fight wasn't exactly the quietest. Master told me to go with him to see it, so here I am. He said with a smile as he walked up to the three. Rias and Akino frowned at him, but didn't sense any negative emotion from Yo, so they didn't act out. I've got to say that it was very entertaining. You're getting stronger. He sure is, said the orb. Too bad all of that training went to waste. I thought you could have beaten her and came with us. Rias glared at the orb. So you did want Issei? You made sure for your peerage to spend a lot of time with Issei so he could get comfortable and then swoop in when you saw the chance, huh? Yup, said the orb happily, like he didn't care that he was found out. But I think I'm alright with Issei staying with you. I'll just have to plan some new things out. I've been doing that for centuries anyway, ehehe ha 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 ha. Should you be using any magic, Naruto-sama? You should be resting, said Issei in concern. Rias picked up on how he called the orb Naruto-sama. I'll be fine, but you should come by the house real quick. There's something I want to do. Naruto ended mysteriously before vanishing away. Guess you all are coming to the house. Anna? Said Yo as he looked back to his fiancée. Anna sighed before jumping off her branch and walked over to the two damaged devils. Get better, she said as a red hue covered her hands. She placed them both on Rias and Issei, and the two felt their injuries heal a little bit, the pain also numbing with it. That should help you move around. We'll meet you there, she said as she disappeared in a magic circle. The two devils groaned as they stood up from the ground. So, we're going to their house now? Asked Rias. Sure are. You should come while Kisame is asleep. It's quieter in the house, said Yo as he disappeared as well. Akino, Rias and Issei all nodded at each other before following after Yo. Naruto's peerage house. The group appeared outside Naruto's house. Yo was holding the door open for them with a smile. They appreciated him with a bow and entered their house. It feels homey, said Akino with a laugh as she looked around. It is, said Yo as he closed the door. Well, it is when it's quiet. When Kisame is awake. That's when it feels like a war zone here. Just keep it quiet until we get to Master's room. Is it this Naruto person? Asked Rias. Naruto-sama. Yo corrected with a rare glare of his. The three younger devils gulped before nodding their heads at Yo. While he seemed nice, Yo could be scary when he wanted to. The group walked up the stairs and was walking down a long hallway until they walked out of one of the many rooms in the house. His eyes brightened at the sight of his friends and ran up to them. Yosh. Issei, Rias, Akino, and Yo are all here. He shouted loudly. This is a moment we must take advantage of and train in the backyard. It would be a glorious fight and... Shut the fuck up and go to sleep, Kisame yelled from one of the rooms. Yosh. Mr. Kisame is awake, so now we can all go train together. What happy day it is. One of the doors was forcefully opened and Kisame stepped into the hallway, only wearing some purple boxers. He was about to yell at Lee, but then noticed that Akino and Rias were present. I didn't know we ordered prostitutes. Fire surrounded Rias and Akino as they gave Kisame their deadliest glares, but he ignored them fully. What are they doing here? Naruto-sama wanted to talk to them. Yo said. Well, he better do it quietly, damn it. I've got a lot to do tomorrow, and I want my sleep. Kisame slammed the door behind him. Alright then, let's continue, said Yo as he continued his track to Naruto's room. They finally made it to the last room in the hallway, and Yo opened it up for the three. Surprise filled Rias and Akino as they finally got a good look at Naruto, who was hooked up too many machines and looked very weak. What happened to him? Akino whispered. He was sealed for a very long time, Naya. Kuroka walked out of the bathroom the room had and looked towards the shocked teenagers. Rias narrowed her eyes at Kuroka, but she recalled her brother's words about the cat girl. What are you doing here? She asked professionally. Taking care of my king, of course. Kuroka answered back with a little bit of sass. She held a wet rag and placed it over Naruto's head. He has a fever. So, this is him, said Akino as she took in the sight of Naruto's sickly body. You said he was sealed. What do you mean by that? Issei will explain to you two at a later date. All eyes were on Naruto as he slowly opened his own blue eyes. It's good to see you two after watching you through my orbs. Naruto-sama. Issei walked over to one side of the bed. Kuroka didn't put up any fight, but she made sure to watch him. Are you okay? Yeah, I am. Naruto wheezed out, I'm sorry. I've been manipulating you to liking my peerage. I thought it would make the transition easier for you to become one of us. It's alright, Naruto-sama. Just focus on getting better. Issei replied, not even mad that Naruto was manipulating him over the past few weeks. I will, but first, bring your head closer to me. Everyone was confused at Naruto's claim, but Issei complied. He lowered his head close enough to that Naruto could place his hand on his head. Naruto hummed to himself for a while with a troubled look on his. She put a curse on you. Didn't she? A blue magic seal appeared on the back of Issei's neck. Rias and Akina were shocked, but kept themselves collected. Issei couldn't even mold words as he looked Naruto in the eyes. The fallen angel did. A green glow from Issei's hand appeared as Drake spoke. He didn't want anyone to worry about him, so he kept it to himself. Very foolish, if you ask me. Traitor. Issei muttered, but he continued to keep eye contact with Naruto. Issei. Are you happy with yourself? No, you are not. Yuma appeared next to him with an angry face. Don't trust him. He tried to manipulate you into his peerage. They'll always try to use you. I never did that. I just wanted you for you. Please, Issei. Don't leave me. Issei sighed and turned back to Naruto, ignoring Yuma's cries. They were fake anyway, so there wasn't a need to pay attention to her any longer. Even though I need to work on a few things with Rias, but I am happy with myself. Naruto smiled as his hand grew red. It surrounded Issei's head and he felt warm from the energy. It was comforting him, calming him down. You're a good boy, Issei. With good goals. You don't need to punish yourself for something you weren't in control of. I'll make those nightmares disappear. Naruto's aura surrounded the seal. The blue seal started to phase away, slowly being eaten by Naruto's magic, until it was gone. Issei took in a deep breath, feeling like a huge weight was released from his shoulders. Thank you. No problem. Naruto said with a smile as he removed his hand from Issei's head. Rias, come here. Rias slowly made her way next to Issei at Naruto's bedside. She winced at all the tubes coming from Naruto's body. He looked like he was in pain. I'm fine, you don't have to worry about me. He said with a laugh. What's your name again? Rias' sweat dropped. I am Rias Gre. What is the name you want to be known for? Just Rias. She said with a smile. Naruto smiled back. We'll be in touch. Rias. I'm sorry for manipulating your pawn. I did like his attitude, and he was funny. It's alright. This all wouldn't have happened if I was a better king. I thank you for allowing him to be trained by your members. They were bored anyway. Kuroka giggled along with her master, but I'm glad that everything is peaceful now. I actually want Issei to stay with you now. It'll make for an interesting future. Naruto laughed as his eyes started to slowly close. Today was a funny day. That's it for this reading. Hit like and subscribe for a free ticket pass going to the different worlds of anime fanfictions. Looking forward to having you on board again.